A skeletal hand burst from the cracked earth, its fingers clawing hungrily at the sky. Moments later, a towering figure rose, a warden of the dead, its rotted armor clinging to bone, glowing runes pulsing across its skeletal frame. Hollow eyes locked onto Asher, radiating an ancient, burning malice. So this is what festers in a dead land left to rot. With a grating screech, the warden hefted a rusted greatsword, its blade crackling with a sickly black energy. Without hesitation, it swung, a sweeping arc of cursed power tearing through the air. Asher moved in a blink, rolling aside as the ground behind him shattered, sending stone and dust spraying like shrapnel. Straightening with a calm breath, Asher muttered, "Not bad. Let's see how long you last." With a flick of his wrist, crimson chains surged forth, aiming to entangle the creature's limbs. But the undead knight reacted with unnatural speed. It swatted the chains aside in a single brutal swipe, the force rupturing the air and sending a shockwave of death energy barreling toward Asher. He narrowed his gaze. Brute force won't win this.
Fine. Asher vanished.
In an instant, he reappeared behind the warden, his scythe already descending. The blade struck with a crackling hiss, carving into the enchanted spine, fracture spiderwebbing across the undead's bones. The warden howled, a sound of pure death, and twisted unnaturally, its greatsword cleaving through the air with terrifying speed. Asher ducked, feeling the sheer force of the blade rip the very air around him as it carved a gaping trench into the earth. Without pause, Asher retaliated. Crimson tendrils burst from his back, latching onto the exposed ribs. He pulled himself forward, scythe flashing in a deadly arc. Crack! Steel met bone. Sparks flew. The armor cracked, but refused to break. The warden retaliated with a roar, unleashing a shockwave of death energy. The blast slammed into Asher midair, hurling him backward. He landed in a crouch, skidding across the broken ground. Straightening, his crimson eyes gleamed.
All right. Enough playing around.
The runes etched into his gauntlets flared with power as he drew deep from his blood magic. The warden charged, blade raised. Asher raised his hand. A crimson sigil bloomed beneath the undead's feet.
Blood shackle.
Chains of blood-forged steel erupted from the ground, ensnaring the warden's limbs. The creature thrashed, its runes sputtering against the draining force of the chains.
Now.
Asher blurred forward, scythe vibrating with lethal energy. He leaped, spinning midair, and brought the weapon down with brutal finality.
SHRRK.
The scythe cleaved the warden's skull in two. The creature let out one last, soul-curdling screech before crumbling into dust, its cursed essence scattering into the wind. Silence fell. Asher exhaled, surveying the ruined battlefield.
Too easy.
But then, the ground trembled. The ruins responded to the warden's death. Strange glyphs carved into the stones blazed to life, pulsing with ominous light. The air thickened, heavy with an unseen force. A deep whispering voice echoed from the depths, and a hidden passage revealed itself. A spiraling staircase leading underground yawned open before him. Asher narrowed his eyes, then stepped forward without hesitation. The stone steps groaned under his boots as he descended into the heart of the ruin. The deeper he went, the colder it became, until the chill bit into his very bones. Strange glyphs lined the walls, glowing faintly, reacting to his passage with a rhythmic pulse. At the bottom, a massive obsidian door awaited him. Untouched by time, its surface shimmered with a dark, malevolent energy. Asher pressed his palm against it. A surge of corruption flooded his veins, twisting, tempting, but Asher's blood easily suppressed it.
The door creaked open.
He entered a vast underground chamber lit by ghostly floating lanterns. Towering pillars of black stone reached into the gloom above. In the center, an altar stood, shrouded in coiling wisps of shadow.
And then, he felt it. A gaze. A presence, ancient and heavy.
"Welcome, chosen blood," a deep voice rumbled from the darkness. A figure emerged, towering, cloaked in flowing black and crimson robes, a burning sigil seared onto its hooded brow. "You have broken the seal," the being intoned. "Now, you must prove yourself." Before Asher could speak, the ground shook.
The altar cracked open.
From within rose a nightmare, a creature of warped flesh and living shadow. Multiple red eyes glared with hatred, and clawed hands crackled with dark energy. The figure spoke again, its voice a command. "Defeat the Guardian, and claim the knowledge of the ancients."
Asher sighed.
"I came for the relic, not your games." He snapped his fingers. Two figures materialized, his reapers. The Revenant, a living shadow, and the Unholy Knight, a juggernaut of cursed steel.
"Kill it," Asher ordered.
The Revenant struck first, phasing through the Guardian's claw swipe and raking its dagger across the beast's chest.
Shrrk.
Dark blood hissed into the air. The unholy knight followed, its greatsword crashing down like a falling star.
Boom.
The blow cracked stone and bone alike. The guardian howled, its body flickering between forms. The reapers pressed the assault, precision and brutality combined. The revenant darted in with vicious strikes, the unholy knight shattered limbs with devastating blows. Moments later, the creature collapsed into nothingness, its howl swallowed by the oppressive silence.
A slow clap echoed.
The hooded entity stood by the altar, nodding.
Efficient.
As expected. Asher ignored him. Instead, he approached the altar, reaching toward the relic, the true prize. A small crimson orb floated above the cracked stone, pulsing with an ancient, immense power. Empyrean vampire blood essence. Rarer than gold. Royal blood, second only to the progenitor. Without hesitation, Asher took it. A smirk tugged at his lips. What was supposed to be so difficult about this place? Without ceremony, he drank the blood.
For a heartbeat, nothing. Then, his blood surged.
Not with corruption, but with dominance. His sanguine supreme ability devoured the foreign essence, merging it seamlessly into his own.
Result?
All the powers of an Empyrean vampire, without the transformation. A dangerous gleam shone in Asher's eyes. With a thought, he refilled the orb, now imbued with blood that would bind any who drank it to his will. A fitting repayment for whoever orchestrated this.
As he turned to leave, the exit was gone. The air shifted.
And before his eyes, a mocking message appeared. Now the true trial begins. Escape the ruins.
Keek.
A chilling, taunting laughter filled the chamber. Asher narrowed his eyes, a cold smile curving his lips. Finally, something interesting. The air thickened, and in the blink of an eye, the chamber twisted, warping into an endless labyrinth of shifting corridors. The stone walls pulsed with writhing red veins, leaking a sickly energy into the air.
A living maze.
Before Asher could react, death lunged from the shadows. A monstrous shape surged forward, a grotesque amalgamation of writhing limbs and jagged fangs. Its very existence radiated X-rank killing intent, the kind that would leave lesser beings paralyzed or dead on the spot.
Slash.
Asher twisted instinctively, narrowly avoiding the creature's claws. His scythe materialized with a thought, slicing a brutal arc through the monster's body.
It crumbled, but more were coming.
The ground rumbled. 3 more entities ripped themselves free from the living walls. 1, a centipede abomination, its blackened exoskeleton dripping venom. Another, a skeletal wraith, its tattered hands clawing the air, reeking of soul death. And looming behind them, the true predator, a hulking beast wreathed in EX-rank power, its blood-red eyes locked onto Asher like a wolf stalking a wounded deer. For the first time in a long while, Asher felt it.
Pressure.
He was only S-rank. And this entire maze? It was designed to slaughter anything below EX. TCH, Asher muttered, tightening his grip on his scythe. So that's how it's gonna be. The maze writhed around him, walls shifting, doors sealing, escape routes vanishing. Every step forward was a new death trap.
New monsters. New horrors. This wasn't a maze. It was a hunting ground. And Asher was the prey.
The centipede struck first, its tail whipping forward with force enough to pulverize steel. Asher ducked low, sliding under the attack, crimson tendrils bursting from his back. They speared into the creature's softer underside, drawing a shriek, but before he could finish it,
the wraith descended.
A blast of death magic engulfed him, tendrils of spectral hunger clawing at his soul. For a moment, his blood slowed, his strength wavered.
Annoying.
His sanguine surge flared, a crimson light exploding outward, purging the death magic in a flash. He vanished, then reappeared behind the wraith.
Schlock.
His scythe tore the ghostly creature apart, its final scream swallowed by the shifting walls.
No time to celebrate. The real threat charged.
The massive beast covered the entire corridor in one leap, its claws swinging down like the hammer of a god.
Boom.
The impact shattered stone, sending shockwaves down the labyrinth. Asher flash-stepped backward, narrowly escaping obliteration. The creature stood tall, its black fur bristling with raw, violent power. Its presence suffocated the air. Then it spoke, a voice like the grinding of mountains. Your power, too weak. Asher twirled his scythe lazily, grinning.
Yeah?
Then I'll just have to compensate with skill. Because while pure rank mattered, skill decided who lived.
And Asher?
He was loaded with skill. From his royal lineage, he had refined his sanguine supreme, a power so monstrous it could rival Yek's abilities at their peak. From fusing Blood Crown with his father's legacy, he wielded Soul Reaper Monarch, giving him dominion over the dead. From devouring a legendary rank Métis, he unlocked Phantom Veil, a high-tier illusion ability allowing him to phase and deceive.
And beyond those?
Eternal Creation, the legacy of the ancients, giving him the terrifying ability to create and bend reality itself. He wasn't just a warrior. He was a catastrophe waiting to happen. But that was for the future. Right now, he was just a man trying to carve a path through hell.
The maze shifted again. Twisting corridors. Living walls.
Whispers that clawed at sanity. Every few steps, monsters struck. Every time, Asher met them with blade and blood, his movements honed to lethal precision. A skeletal beast dove from above, its wings skeletal, its scream deafening. Asher didn't even blink. The phantom chains of Soul Reaper Monarch lashed upward, dragging the creature into the abyss.
Another.
A colossal knight clad in cursed black steel, charged from behind, its greatsword roaring with death.
Wrong move.
Asher's body flickered, the phantom veil activating, allowing the greatsword to pass harmlessly through him. Before the knight could register the miss.
Shurak. One swing. One crimson arc.
Its head hit the stone floor, rolling away like a child's toy. Yet the maze wouldn't relent. The walls shifted, new monsters howled, and the blood-soaked corridors seemed endless.
It wasn't a test of power.
It was a test of endurance. And Asher could feel it, deep in his blood. If he didn't find the exit soon, even he might break. He ducked another spear aimed at his heart, grinning as he spun away, laughing under his breath. I'm actually having fun.
Another monster lunged.
Another bloody spray painted the walls.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going insane, he muttered, the grin widening. The predator within him stirred, hungrier than ever. And somewhere, deep within the heart of the labyrinth, something far worse was waiting.
Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
He was grinning, his heart pounding with exhilaration.
Dodge. Counter. Kill.
Every move felt effortless, his instincts sharper than ever. The longer he fought, the more he could feel it creeping in, that twisted thrill of battle. This isn't normal, Asher thought, sidestepping another monstrous knight's blade. His blood tendrils lashed out, coiling around the knight's throat before ripping its head clean off. He exhaled slowly, feeling his blood boil. It was his sanguine supreme ability. Or rather, something buried within it. The more he fought, the more it fed off the battle. The power was reacting, heightening his senses, sharpening his reflexes, urging him forward.
TCH.
This damn ability, it wants more. A beast lunged at him from the shadows, 6 arms, each wielding a different cursed weapon. It was fast, unnaturally so, its movements erratic and unpredictable. But Asher was faster. His phantom veil activated, making him flicker in and out of existence. The creature swung wildly, its weapons passing through empty air as Asher's scythe sliced through its torso in one clean stroke. A splatter of dark blood. A dying scream. And Asher was grinning again. Damn it. He shook his head, forcing himself to focus. The maze wasn't infinite. There had to be a way out, a pattern. He needed to stop indulging in the thrill of combat and start thinking. But then, a low, guttural laugh echoed through the maze. Asher's grin faded, replaced by cold calculation. That laugh, deep, guttural, mocking, wasn't just some mindless beast. Something intelligent was lurking within this maze, watching him, waiting for something. He took a slow breath, suppressing the lingering thrill of battle. His crimson eyes scanned his surroundings, noting the intricate patterns on the walls, the shifting shadows in the distance. The maze wasn't just a physical trial, it was something more. If this was just about killing, I would have walked out by now, Asher thought. The ground beneath him trembled. A new presence emerged. A tall, gaunt figure stepped from the shadows, clad in tattered royal robes of deep obsidian. Its skeletal hands clutched a long staff, etched with ancient runes pulsing with sickly green light. The creature's sunken eyes gleamed with a predatory glint as it observed him, the corners of its fanged mouth curling into a smirk. You have been most entertaining. The voice didn't come from its mouth. It slithered directly into Asher's mind, each word laced with an eerie echo. Asher tightened his grip on his scythe, but didn't attack. Not yet. You must be the one who designed this trial, he said, voice even. The figure chuckled, tapping its staff against the floor. Designed? No. I merely enforce it. But you are different. Most who come here either perish or break. Yet you thrive. Asher smirked. Yeah, well, I get that a lot. The air grew heavier. A pressure unlike before settled around him, as if reality itself was bending. Then let us see if you are truly worthy, or just another fleeting ember. The maze itself shifted. Walls dissolved into darkness. The pathways collapsed. And Asher found himself standing in an endless void, alone with the warden of the labyrinth. Asher's breath steadied, his grip on the scythe tightening as the void pulsed around him. The warden of the labyrinth floated effortlessly, its tattered robes billowing despite the absence of wind. The air crackled with dark energy, and Asher could feel the sheer weight of the being's presence pressing down on him.
Then, it moved.
In a blink, the warden was in front of him, staff raised high. A single downward strike, but the moment it descended, 100 more followed. Asher's eyes widened.
Illusions?
No, this was reality itself being twisted.
Clang.
He barely managed to raise his scythe in time, intercepting the first strike. The second, third, and fourth came at impossible angles. His body burned as he twisted, evading most but feeling the searing cold of the ones that grazed him. Sanguine supreme, blood manifestation. Crimson tendrils erupted from his back, forming a barrier that took the brunt of the remaining strikes. The impact sent him skidding backward, his boots scraping against the shifting void. Good, the warden mused, hovering in place. But not enough. It raised its hand, and the entire void shook. The space around Asher distorted, warping into a labyrinth of mirrors. Reflections of himself flickered to life, each standing motionless, but he could feel it. Some of them weren't just images. Some of them were real. This was a test of perception. Asher exhaled. A maze within a maze, huh? His smirk returned, but his eyes remained sharp. Phantom veil, illusory sight. The world rippled. For a split second, the illusion wavered, and Asher moved. He dashed forward, scythe slashing through the false reflections, aiming directly for the warden's real body. But just as his blade closed in, shink. A spear of void energy pierced his side. Blood splattered as Asher staggered, his expression twisting into one of frustration. The warden chuckled, its hollow voice echoing. You see through some tricks, but not all. That wound will not heal easily. Asher hissed, glancing at the wound. It wasn't closing. His regeneration wasn't working. This place, it was rejecting his existence.
TCH.
He steadied himself, raising his scythe again. Guess I'll just have to kill you faster then.
The warden tilted its head. Show me.
Asher ignored the pain.
He had no choice.
The moment his regeneration failed to work, he knew, this fight wasn't one he could drag out.
He had to finish it fast.
The warden raised its staff again, and the mirrors around them shattered, turning into shards of liquid shadow that swirled like a hurricane. Each shard gleamed with an unnatural glow, whispering curses in a language long forgotten.
Then they launched.
A storm of razor-sharp void shards rained down on him. Asher reacted instantly. Sanguine supreme, crimson dominion. A massive wave of blood energy erupted from his body, forming a barrier of hardened crimson around him. The shards collided with the blood shield, exploding on impact. The force pushed him back, but Asher didn't let up.
He saw the opening. Phantom veil, step between.
His body blurred, and in the next second, he was behind the warden. His scythe descended, the edge glowing with a deep crimson light.
Die. The blade struck true, or so he thought.
Just as the scythe was about to slice through the warden's neck, its body disintegrated into mist.
Illusions again? Asher's teeth clenched.
The real warden appeared above him, its staff glowing with an eerie silver light. You are quick, it admitted. But speed alone will not save you.
It thrust the staff down.
A pillar of void energy erupted, engulfing Asher completely. For a moment, everything went silent. Then, boom! A massive explosion rocked the entire maze. A pillar of void energy erupted, engulfing Asher completely. For a moment, everything went silent. Then, boom! A massive explosion rocked the entire maze. The force sent debris flying, the remnants of the shattered labyrinth crumbling into the abyss. The warden floated above the destruction, gazing at the spot where Asher had stood. Smoke and crimson mist swirled in the air. Then, a laugh. Low. Dark. Amused. The mist parted. Asher stood there, blood dripping from his lips, his crimson eyes glowing. His entire right arm was missing, burned away by the attack. But he still grinned. You almost got me there. His voice was hoarse but steady. The warden narrowed its gaze. You should be dead. Asher's smirk widened. Too bad I don't die that easily.
His blood surged.
The severed limb regrew instantly, but not just as flesh, it was something more. The new arm pulsed with pure sanguine energy, crimson veins glowing like molten metal. His power had adapted, reshaping his body to survive. Asher rolled his shoulders. The pain was still there, but he didn't care.
Now then.
He raised his scythe, its edge gleaming with newfound power.
My turn. The final round began.
Not on my watch, Warden said, slamming his foot on the ground, causing the walls to shift, and Asher found himself in a different part of the maze. I will found you again, Asher said as the dark creatures attacked him, and he retaliated. Asher's every movement was like a storm, swift, brutal, and relentless. His scythe danced through the air, carving through shadows and illusions. Every time he struck down an enemy, another would rise from the darkness, stronger than before. The labyrinth seemed endless, twisting and shifting with each passing second, as if the ruin itself was trying to break him. But Asher didn't break.
He thrived.
Each clash, each wound, each near-death moment fueled something deep within him. His instincts sharpened, his reflexes became faster, and he felt it. Something inside him was awakening. He could feel the power gripping him, changing him. His sanguine supreme ability pulsed like a second heart, the energy flooding through his veins stronger than ever before.
And then,
the transformation began. It started as a creeping sensation, like liquid fire crawling beneath his skin. His body pulsed, his blood burned, and suddenly, armor began forming. A sleek, crimson exoskeleton spread across his body, molding itself to his frame like a second skin. The surface gleamed with a metallic sheen, jagged and predatory. His fingers curled, and he saw them, razor-sharp claws. He reached up and felt his face. No, a helmet. A part of the armor, smooth yet sharp at the edges, forming over his features. His ears became pointed, more sensitive than before.
And his hair.
His once short strands had turned a long blinding white, flowing wildly behind him like a ghostly flame.
His power had evolved.
This was his new form. Sanguine form, Asher whispered, feeling the name settle deep into his bones. The warden of the maze charged first. It raised its staff, summoning a vortex of void energy, the power twisting into massive chains of darkness that lashed toward him. But Asher didn't move. He didn't need to. The moment the chains touched his armor, they dissolved into nothing. The warden staggered back.
Impossible.
Asher lifted his gaze, his crimson eyes glowing brighter than ever. His power had ascended. He could feel it. His body had become a perfect vessel for destruction.
My turn. In a single instant, Asher vanished. Phantom Veil, step beyond.
He reappeared behind the warden, his claws slicing through its back before it could react. The moment his hand touched the creature, blood surged from his palm, devouring the warden's essence like a starving beast.
It screamed. But Asher wasn't done. He moved.
Faster than before, stronger than before. He tore through the maze like a demon unleashed, leaving nothing but shredded remains of his enemies behind. The monsters came in waves. X-rank nightmares. Specters that had once been kings. Creatures of the abyss that devoured entire worlds.
He cut them all down.
His claws shredded through armor like paper. His scythe was a reaper of souls, cutting through existence itself. His new armor absorbed the blood of his fallen foes, making him stronger with every kill.
And yet, he wanted more.
He had never felt so alive. As the final creature of the labyrinth, a towering behemoth with 6 arms and void runes carved into its flesh, collapsed at his feet, Asher let out a slow breath. The battlefield was silent. Nothing remained but the ruins of what once stood, the maze finally broken.
And then,
the exit appeared. A glowing archway at the far end of the battlefield, pulsing with golden light. Asher exhaled, his armor slowly receding, leaving only traces of crimson energy flickering around him. He glanced down at his hands. The power was still there waiting. This sanguine form. It was only the beginning. Asher stepped into the golden portal, but instead of what he thought would be an exit, he found himself in an entirely different place. What is this? He muttered, looking around as he found himself standing in the middle of a massive gladiator-style arena. A vast coliseum stretched before him, its structure impossibly large, with towering obsidian walls reaching into an endless void. The ground beneath him was polished black stone, etched with ancient markings that pulsed in an eerie crimson hue. Suddenly, a voice echoed across the arena. "Welcome, new challenger, to the Colosseum of Gods." Asher's eyes narrowed as he scanned the arena, searching for the source of the voice, but there was no one. It was as if the Colosseum itself was speaking. "Here you are granted the honor to fight, and to entertain the gods." What an opportunity you've been given. Tisk, so much for that, Asher scoffed, clicking his tongue in annoyance. I thought this was some sort of legacy ground, not an arena for the amusement of some so-called gods. A heavy silence followed Asher's words. Then, the voice of the Colosseum rumbled once more.
Amusement? No. This is a test.
Only those who conquer the Colosseum of gods may claim its rewards. Fail, and you become nothing more than dust beneath its arena. The runes beneath Asher's feet flared ominously, and the obsidian gates around the arena began to tremble.
Boom.
The first gate slammed open, revealing a hulking figure shrouded in black flames. Its 4 glowing eyes locked onto Asher as it stepped forward, dragging a colossal greatsword that left molten scars on the stone floor. First opponent, Infernal Warlord, rank SS. A grin flickered across Asher's face.
Interesting.
Without hesitation, the Infernal Warlord charged, the weight of its sword splitting the air as it swung down with the force of a meteor.
Asher vanished.
The blade crashed into the ground where he stood, the impact shaking the entire arena. The moment the dust settled, Asher reappeared mid-air, above the Infernal Warlord. With a flick of his wrist, blood tendrils erupted from his back, twisting like spears as they shot toward the warlord. The beast roared, flames surging from its body as it swung its greatsword, slicing through the tendrils. Asher landed gracefully, rolling his shoulders.
Tough one. But not enough.
The air around him shimmered as his Sanguine Supreme form activated. His body pulsed with power, his sleek red armor forming over his frame, claws lengthening into razor-sharp blades. The warlord lunged again, its flames intensifying. Asher met the attack head-on, vanishing in a blur of red light and reappearing behind the monster in an instant. Slash. A deep, jagged wound tore across the warlord's back. The beast howled, but before it could retaliate, Asher's Phantom Veil ability activated. His form flickered like an illusion, appearing and disappearing unpredictably. He reappeared directly in front of the warlord, his scythe materializing in his grip. With a swift motion, he cleaved through its flaming chest.
A moment of silence.
Then, the Infernal Warlord's flames died out, its body collapsing into a heap of smoldering ash.
First opponent, defeated.
The Colosseum trembled once more as another gate creaked open. Next opponent, Abyssal Executioner, rank SS+. Asher let out a breath, rolling his neck. Not even a moment to rest? Fine, bring it on.
Boom.
The second gate burst open, and a towering figure cloaked in abyssal energy emerged. Its body was wrapped in dark chains, and 2 glowing violet eyes pierced through the darkness like twin stars. In one hand, it wielded a massive executioner's axe, its edge dripping with a black mist that corroded the stone beneath it. Next opponent, Abyssal Executioner, rank SS+. A wicked grin spread across Asher's face as he cracked his knuckles. Now this looks like fun. The Abyssal Executioner moved without hesitation, vanishing in an instant. Clang. A wave of force erupted between them as Asher barely managed to parry the incoming axe strike with his scythe. The sheer power behind the attack sent him skidding backward, carving a deep trench in the arena's obsidian floor. Fast. The executioner didn't stop. Chains shot out from its body, twisting and writhing like living serpents, aiming to bind Asher's limbs. Not a chance. The executioner didn't stop. Chains shot out from its body, twisting and writhing like living serpents, aiming to bind Asher's limbs. Not a chance. With a flick of his wrist, Asher's Sanguine Supreme ability surged, blood-forged claws extending as he sliced through the incoming chains. The severed pieces withered into smoke, but more took their place, coming from every direction. He clicked his tongue, his Phantom Veil ability activating just in time.
His form blurred.
Illusions of himself flickered across the battlefield, confusing the executioner for a split second. A second was all he needed. Schlink. A blood-red scythe materialized in Asher's hands, and with a single sweeping motion, he carved through the executioner's side, dark ichor spilling onto the floor. The executioner roared, but Asher was already moving, appearing above it mid-air, claws extended. Die. He plunged downward like a crimson comet, his claws aiming straight for the executioner's head. Clang. At the last second, the executioner raised its axe, catching Asher's attack. The force of the clash sent out a shockwave, cracking the ground beneath them. For a moment, neither moved. Then, the executioner's empty hand lunged forward, grasping Asher's throat in an iron grip. TCH. A surge of abyssal energy erupted from its palm, burning through Asher's armor, making his vision flicker red with pain. The dark energy attempted to corrupt his body, to infect his soul. But then, a deep, primal power awakened within him. The Sanguine Supreme ability pulsed, his entire being rejecting the foreign energy. His crimson aura flared, counteracting the corruption. Asher's expression twisted into something between a smirk and a snarl. Not enough to kill me. Blood tendrils shot out from his back, impaling the executioner's arm and forcing it to release him. Asher landed gracefully, rolling his shoulders.
All right. My turn. His form shimmered again. But this time, it was different.
The air itself trembled, and the markings on the Colosseum floor flared brighter.
Then,
his third ability activated. A shadowy mist enveloped his body, his form shifting, merging with the darkness itself. His white hair flowed wildly, his red armor deepening in color, and his presence becoming almost godlike. This was his newly unlocked form. Sanguine Monarch form. The executioner hesitated, sensing the change. But before it could react,
Asher vanished. A single slash. A single movement. And then,
the abyssal executioner's body split in two, collapsing as its abyssal energy was devoured by Asher's overwhelming presence.
Opponent defeated.
The arena fell silent once more. But Asher barely had time to breathe before the next gate opened. A suffocating presence filled the air. And from the shadows of the third gate, a golden figure stepped forward. Next opponent, Celestial Tyrant, rank SSS.
Asher's grin widened.
Now we're talking. The golden figure strode forward, each step radiating divine energy that made the very air tremble. It was clad in ornate golden armor, its face obscured by a shining helmet that revealed only two blazing white eyes. In its hand, it held a greatsword wreathed in pure celestial fire, burning so intensely that the arena's obsidian ground melted beneath its feet. Asher could feel it.
This was different.
If the abyssal executioner was overwhelming in raw force, then the celestial tyrant was something else entirely. It wasn't just strong.
It was absolute.
A pressure unlike anything before descended upon him, making his very soul tremble.
Heh.
Asher cracked his neck, licking his lips. Let's see what you got.
Boom.
Before he could even finish speaking, the celestial tyrant moved.
It didn't teleport.
It didn't use tricks.
It was just pure speed.
In an instant, its flaming sword was already inches from Asher's neck.
Clang.
Asher barely managed to block, his scythe grinding against the burning greatsword, sparks flying in every direction.
But
a burning pain erupted across his chest.
He looked down.
A deep gash had already been seared into his armor, flesh smoldering beneath it. Asher's pupils dilated.
Fast.
No, beyond fast, it had attacked twice before he even registered the first movement.
And it wasn't finished. Whoosh.
The celestial tyrant twisted its body, swinging its massive sword like a blur of golden fire. Asher's instinct screamed. Phantom veil, illusion step. His body flickered, but too slow.
Slash.
A searing pain tore through his side, sending him flying across the arena. Crash. He smashed into the obsidian wall, coughing up blood as the heat still burned through his wounds.
For the first time in a long time, Asher felt himself panting. He clenched his fists.
He wasn't supposed to feel this much pain. The celestial tyrant didn't hesitate. It raised its sword high above its head, golden energy gathering in a blinding halo of destruction. Divine judgment, holy annihilation. The very arena trembled. The next second, a pillar of golden fire descended from above, aiming to erase Asher's existence.
But then,
something inside him snapped. A surge of unfathomable power erupted from within his core. The wounds on his body sealed instantly, the flames licking his skin but refusing to burn him anymore.
His blood boiled.
I will go out too, Asher said as he activated his sanguine form. A dark crimson aura exploded around him, corrupting the golden flames, twisting them into a deep, blood-red inferno. His hair turned completely white, his eyes shining with endless scarlet light. Blood-forged wings sprouted from his back, their feathers razor-sharp like blades. His armor shifted, sleek but deadly, adorned with obsidian markings glowing with divine and abyssal energy fused as one.
And then,
a second scythe appeared in his other hand, twin blades dripping with the essence of life and death itself.
Asher exhaled. For the first time, he felt complete.
New form unlocked, sanguine form, Reaper.
Boom. In a flash of crimson light, he vanished.
Before the celestial tyrant could react, Asher reappeared behind it. A single whisper escaped his lips.
Too slow.
SHHHHNK. A cross-shaped slash tore through the celestial tyrant's golden armor.
For the first time, its body shuddered.
golden ichor spilled onto the arena floor. It tried to turn.
Too late.
Asher's twin scythes struck again.
And again. And again.
Each attack was a blur, so fast that even the Colosseum of gods struggled to process the movements. The celestial tyrant tried to retaliate, but its attacks phased through him, his phantom veil and sanguine sovereign form weaving through space like an untouchable specter. Finally, Asher appeared above his enemy. Both scythes raised.
Time to fall.
Crimson Requiem, final execution.
Slash. A single cut. A single moment. And then.
The celestial tyrant's body split in two.
It collapsed. Silence.
The once unstoppable warrior of the gods had fallen.
Opponent defeated.
Asher landed softly, exhaling slowly. His new form slowly receded, his armor returning to normal. He clenched his fists, feeling the immense power still coursing through his veins. This form is great, but it's too damn mana-consuming, Asher mumbled as he absorbed the celestial tyrant, turning it into his own power. A surge of energy rushed through him as his rank increased. SS rank, huh? He muttered, closing his eyes and feeling the power coursing through his veins. Once again, my power has doubled, he nodded to himself, a smirk forming on his lips. As the next gate rumbled open, a voice echoed across the arena. A voice unlike any other. You have done well, mortal. But now, you face your final challenge. The presence that emerged dwarfed everything before it. Asher's eyes widened slightly.
For the first time in his life,
he felt something close to fear. Final opponent, the god of war, Exranak.
Asher smiled.
Now we're really talking. Though if I hadn't leveled up, I would have been in deep trouble, Asher thought as he eyed the man in front of him. A massive, muscle-bound old warrior, his entire body covered in scars. His eyes had no pupils, only a glowing white void.
Be grateful, mortal.
You get to fight the projection of the god of war when he was at EX rank. The eerie voice echoed through the arena, and Asher narrowed his eyes at the old man standing calmly before him. Let's just save the small talk and start the match, Asher said, smirking as he cracked his neck. The old man chuckled, his voice deep and rumbling.
Ready.
Will you let me go if I say no? Asher asked jokingly. The old man simply sat down cross-legged, folding his arms.
Yes, I would.
I like to fight at my opponent's peak. Asher raised a brow. Ha, you're more considerate than I expected. The old warrior closed his eyes. Just tell me when you're ready to fight. Asher nodded and sat cross-legged as well, beginning to stabilize his realm. Fighting immediately after advancing was not advised. One needed to become fully aware of their new power and senses. A sudden surge of strength without control could lead to mistakes, both for oneself and others. He had learned that lesson from a couple way back in the academy. A newly advanced student had excitedly hugged his girlfriend in joy, only to end up breaking her bones due to his uncontrolled strength. Though she had been fine after some healing, the poor guy had been red-faced with guilt, realizing firsthand what carelessness could cost. With that in mind, Asher closed his eyes, feeling the vast energy coursing through him. His sanguine supreme ability had evolved, his body reinforced to a whole new level. His senses stretched farther than before, his muscles held power beyond anything he had ever wielded. This was not just an increase in rank, this was a transformation. Each advancement brought a massive improvement, elevating him to a whole new level. After a moment, Asher finally stabilized his advancement. He stretched his body and moved around, adjusting to the newfound control over his enhanced form. I am a god now, Asher declared, his voice calm yet filled with conviction. The old man, who had been meditating, nodded as he woke up. He stood up, cracking his knuckles. Let's fight then, he said with a grin. Experience new tales on my virtual library empire. Asher nodded, stepping forward. The old man may have looked skinny and frail, but he was a war god, or at least a projection of one from when the war god was at X rank. That was 2 whole ranks above Asher's current level, meaning that even unarmed, the old man could prove to be a formidable challenge. However, thanks to the abilities Asher possessed, they now stood on equal ground. Blood clashed with the air around him as he activated the Reaper form of his Sanguine Supreme ability. His body shifted, enveloped in sleek crimson armor, his claws extending like deadly blades. His long white hair billowed behind him, and his golden red eyes gleamed with raw power. The battle was about to begin. The air between them grew heavy, charged with the weight of the battle about to unfold. The old man stood firm, his presence radiating raw experience and unshakable might. Asher, clad in his Sanguine Reaper form, grinned. Without warning, the old man moved. A single step, yet the sheer force behind it shattered the ground beneath his feet. He vanished from sight, reappearing right in front of Asher with a fist aimed at his face.
Fast.
Asher barely had time to react. He twisted his body, avoiding the direct hit, but the force of the punch still sent a shockwave rippling through the air. He countered instantly, slashing forward with his blood-forged claws. The old man dodged effortlessly, weaving through the attack like a phantom. Not bad, the war god's projection mused. But if that's all you've got, this will be over in an instant.
Asher smirked.
I was about to say the same thing. He summoned his sanguine chains, crimson tendrils of blood whipping forward, aiming to bind his opponent. The old man's eyes gleamed with interest as he dodged, but Asher anticipated his movement. He controlled the chains mid-air, redirecting them at impossible angles.
Caught you.
The chains wrapped around the old man's arm, only for him to pull Asher forward instead, using his own technique against him. Asher barely had time to brace himself before the war god's knee slammed into his stomach. He gritted his teeth, feeling the impact rattle his bones, but he refused to falter. He retaliated with a burst of blood requiem, releasing a destructive shockwave of condensed blood energy. The old man skidded back slightly, nodding in approval.
Good. Very good.
His voice carried a hint of excitement now. Let's take it up a notch. Suddenly, his presence changed. The once casual aura of a strong fighter transformed into something overwhelming. The weight of true battle experience pressed down on Asher like an unrelenting storm. The air itself trembled as a crimson glow ignited around the old man's fists. This is the strength of an X-rank war god? Asher's blood boiled with excitement. He didn't care how strong his opponent was.
He was going to win. With a grin, he launched himself forward.
The battle had only just begun. The moment Asher launched himself forward, the very air seemed to crackle with tension. His blood-fueled claws extended as he dashed toward the war god's projection, his sanguine reaper form pulsating with raw power. The old man merely raised a single hand, his fingers clenched into a loose fist. To any normal observer, it seemed like a casual stance, but Asher knew better. The moment he closed the distance, Asher unleashed a flurry of strikes, his claws slashing in unpredictable patterns, each attack infused with his sanguine edge, a technique that allowed his blood-forged weapons to cut through even the most resilient of defenses. However, the war god was unfazed. With movements as fluid as water, he weaved through the attacks, dodging with precision so sharp it seemed he knew Asher's moves before they even happened. Asher grit his teeth, his mind processing the battle at lightning speed. He needed to change tactics. With a flick of his wrist, he manipulated his blood midair, summoning sanguine chains once again. This time, the chains materialized in an instant, surrounding the war god from all sides. They coiled like vipers, tightening in a deadly snare. But before they could ensnare their prey, the old man stomped his foot on the ground.
A shockwave erupted.
The sheer force sent cracks racing across the arena floor. The chains shattered like fragile glass, dispersing into crimson mist. Asher barely had time to react before the war god appeared in front of him, a fist aimed straight for his chest. With no other option, Asher crossed his arms in a desperate block.
Boom!
The impact sent him skidding backward, his feet carving trenches into the ground. The force behind the punch nearly broke his arms, the raw energy laced in the attack sending tremors through his entire body. He barely managed to regain his footing before the war god pressed forward, his hands glowing with an eerie golden hue. Divine war arts, 1,000 strikes of heaven. The moment those words left the old man's lips, his fists became a blur. Each strike carried the weight of a mountain, the speed of a lightning bolt, and the precision of a master. Asher barely had time to raise his defenses before the onslaught began.
Left hook. Right jab. Palm strike. Elbow thrust. Knee. A spinning back fist.
Each blow landed like a meteor, sending shockwaves through Asher's body. He coughed up blood as he was forced on the defensive, dodging where he could, blocking where he had no choice. His instinct screamed at him. This was an opponent far beyond anything he had ever faced before. But Asher wasn't done yet. With a defiant grin, he activated Phantom Veil, his illusionary ability. His body flickered, his form splitting into afterimages as he moved unpredictably. For a brief moment, the war god's attacks missed, his blows phasing through empty air. Seizing the opportunity, Asher lunged forward, his hands coated in the crimson glow of blood requiem.
He struck.
A direct hit to the war god's chest. The explosion of sanguine energy engulfed the arena, sending debris flying in all directions. The sheer impact cracked the ground beneath them. But before Asher could celebrate, a powerful hand emerged from the smoke, gripping his throat like an iron vice. The war god hadn't even been scratched. With a flick of his wrist, he hurled Asher across the arena. The younger warrior crashed into the stone wall, the force enough to leave a crater where he landed. He coughed, pain lancing through his body. But instead of despair, he felt exhilaration. This was a real fight. Slowly he stood, wiping the blood from his lips. His sanguine reaper form flickered, but he forced it to stabilize. He couldn't afford to lose control now. If he wanted to win, he had to go beyond his limits. The war god watched him, his expression unreadable.
Are you done?
Or do you have more to show me? Asher grinned, his crimson eyes gleaming with a predatory light. Oh, I'm just getting started. He raised his hand, and suddenly, the entire atmosphere shifted. A deep, foreboding energy surged through the air as a new ability activated. Eternal Creation, Blood Monarch's Wrath. A crimson aura burst from his body, forming a massive pair of spectral wings. His presence became suffocating, the sheer force of his unleashed power distorting the space around him. The war god's eyes narrowed in interest. Now this, the old man murmured, is worth fighting.
Asher vanished.
He reappeared behind the war god, his clawed hands coated in a new energy, Sanguine Monarch's claws. He slashed down with unparalleled force. The war god turned, barely blocking in time. The impact sent him skidding backward for the first time since the battle began. Asher didn't relent. He pressed forward, his attacks coming faster and stronger. The entire battlefield became a blur of red and gold as the two clashed. Each strike shattered the ground beneath them, each blow sending ripples of energy into the void. The war god's counterattacks were relentless. He switched tactics, summoning a spectral warhammer formed of divine energy. With one swing, he sent Asher flying, but before the younger warrior could crash into the ground, he twisted midair, using his wings to stabilize himself. With a mighty roar, he summoned a storm of crimson spears, Bloodstorm Execution. The sky darkened as thousands of spears rained down, each one infused with Asher's overwhelming power. The war god's expression hardened. He clenched his fist, and golden energy burst from his body. Divine War Arts, Shield of Ares. A massive golden barrier formed around him, blocking the incoming assault. The two forces clashed, the resulting explosion shaking the entire dimension. The sheer impact of their battle began distorting reality itself. Minutes stretched into hours. Discover more stories at my virtual library empire. Neither side relented. Each exchanged hundreds, if not thousands, of blows. Asher's body ached, but his excitement only grew. He was learning, adapting, evolving with each passing second. His abilities sharpened, his reactions quickened, his attacks refined. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, both fighters stood opposite each other once more. Blood dripped from Asher's lips, his body bruised and battered. The war god, too, showed signs of fatigue, his once pristine robes tattered, his breathing heavier than before. Asher exhaled, his vision slightly blurry. But his grin never faded. That was the best fight I've ever had, he admitted. The war god chuckled, nodding. You have done well. Better than I expected. The arena began to fade. The trial was over. You are worthy, the war god's projection said. Continue walking this path, and one day, you may surpass even me. Asher smirked. That's the plan. With those final words, the battlefield disappeared in a flash of golden light, and Asher found himself standing at the exit of the Colosseum, with a book in his hands that read War God, Art of Annihilatory Fists. Asher looked at the book and mumbled, "So there are more." He nodded, processing the information he had gained. The war god, like many others, had built his trial grounds all over the world, and whoever conquered them would earn the chance to obtain one technique from him, just like how Asher had gained this one. Asher flipped through the pages of the ancient tome, his eyes scanning the intricate diagrams and detailed explanations of the war god's annihilatory fists. The text was written in a complex script, but thanks to his heightened perception, he quickly deciphered it. This technique is brutal, he thought, excitement flashing in his eyes. It doesn't just destroy the opponent, it erases them entirely, leaving no trace. No wonder it's called annihilatory fists. The sheer destructive force described in the book made even him shudder slightly. The technique focused on channeling raw physical force into every strike, compressing the energy into devastating bursts that could obliterate anything in its path. As he absorbed the knowledge, Asher felt the familiar rush of enlightenment that came whenever he acquired a new ability. His body instinctively responded, his muscles tensing, his mana shifting, and his very core adapting to the newfound power. He clenched his fists. Let's test this out. Looking around, he realized he was no longer in the Colosseum but in an open field, likely a result of the trial's completion. Without hesitation, he took a deep breath, planting his feet firmly on the ground. Asher clenched his fist, feeling the three energies flowing within him, each one distinct yet interconnected. His mana surged like an endless tide, his aura burned like an eternal flame, and his soul energy pulsed with an ancient, almost sentient power. He had pushed himself beyond his limits in the Colosseum, and yet he still stood, stronger than ever. He glanced at the book in his hand, War God, Art of Annihilatory Fists. The golden cover shimmered faintly with an aura of destruction. This was a technique personally crafted by the War God, a martial art that embodied absolute annihilation. It wasn't just about strength, it was about erasing one's enemies completely, leaving nothing behind. A technique that annihilates everything, huh?
Asher smirked.
Sounds like it was made for me. He flipped the book open, and the words glowed with divine radiance as if infused with the will of the War God himself. The first page contained only a single sentence. One who seeks annihilation must first embrace destruction within. The moment he read those words, a flood of knowledge poured into his mind. Countless battle scenes flashed before his eyes, warriors wielding the annihilatory fists against enemies that defied the heavens. Each strike collapsed space, shattered time, and disintegrated existence itself. A sudden pain burned through Asher's arms, and he gritted his teeth as his muscles trembled. His very being was being rewritten to accommodate this new power. His veins turned crimson, his bones hardened, and his aura fluctuated wildly, seeking equilibrium with the new force within him. This technique, it doesn't just teach you, it forces you to adapt, Asher muttered. The War God was truly insane. Enjoy more content from my virtual library empire. But he wasn't one to back down. He welcomed the pain, the challenge. He took a deep breath and clenched his fists. The air around him distorted as raw power gathered around his hands. The first stance of the annihilatory fists was forming. Boom! A shockwave burst forth, reducing the nearby ground to dust. The sheer force of a simple stance had already begun affecting reality itself.
Asher grinned.
Looks like I have something new to test out. Without hesitation, he turned toward the horizon. The War God's Colosseum had been just one of many trials scattered across the world. There were more to conquer, more legacies to claim. And he was going to take them all. But first, let's get that bitch Evelyn, Asher mused as he teleported directly to the Red Fate organization's base. Red Fate's headquarters loomed ahead as Asher descended silently. Inside, a middle-aged man with sharp features sat at a desk, reviewing mission reports. Did you come from a mission? The middle-aged man asked as he eyed Asher. Asher nodded, tossing the wrist pass as well as the relic onto the desk. The red glow of the relic illuminated the dimly lit room, its eerie energy pulsating like a heartbeat. You are insane for taking such a dangerous assignment as your first, the man muttered, shaking his head. He studied Asher carefully, waiting for a response. But Asher said nothing. He already knew the truth. This was Evelyn's trap for him. Yet, he hadn't acted against her. Not yet. Because now, he was going to kill her. Anyway, your mission was cleared, and the contribution has been sent to your account. You can use those points for purchases from the store, the middle-aged man said, handing Asher a confirmation slip. Asher simply nodded and left without another word. Crazy guy. I've recorded everything, the man muttered to himself as he returned to his work, shaking his head. Meanwhile, Asher entered his private room, locking the door behind him. He leaned back against the wall, exhaling slowly. His face was calm, but his mind was already planning his next move. Without hesitation, his features began to shift, his body transforming. Within seconds, he no longer looked like himself but instead resembled the middle-aged man from before. Every detail was perfect, from the wrinkles to the slight tiredness in his eyes. No time to waste. His voice, now a perfect match to the man he had just spoken to, was eerily calm. It was time to kill that bitch. Disguised as the middle-aged man, Asher adjusted his robes and calmly exited his room, blending seamlessly into the bustling corridors of the organization's base. The Red Fate organization was always active, assassins coming and going, missions being assigned, and secrets being traded in whispers. He moved with the confidence of someone who belonged, striding toward the restricted quarters where Evelyn was likely staying. His sharp senses scanned the area as he walked, noting the locations of guards and surveillance devices. He had to be careful. Evelyn wasn't someone to be underestimated. After a few turns, he reached a secure chamber guarded by two elite warriors. They stood like statues, unwavering, their weapons gleaming under the dim light. Lord Evelyn has given orders that she isn't to be disturbed, one of them said, narrowing his eyes at Asher. Feigning annoyance, Asher scoffed. Do you think I don't know that? I have urgent intelligence from the last mission. Do you want to be the one responsible for delaying her? His tone was sharp, impatient, the perfect imitation of the real middle-aged man. The guards hesitated for a moment before nodding.
Very well.
You have 5 minutes. Without another word, they unlocked the door and let him inside. Asher stepped into the chamber, closing the door behind him. The room was lavish, filled with expensive furniture and artifacts, but his eyes locked onto the figure sitting at the center. Evelyn reclined lazily on a luxurious couch, a glass of wine in her hand. Her long crimson hair cascaded over her shoulders, and a sly smirk played on her lips as she gazed at him. I was wondering when you'd show up, she mused, swirling the wine in her glass. It was only a matter of time before you tried something, Asher. He froze for a fraction of a second.
Then he grinned.
You knew. His voice shifted back to his own as he dropped the disguise, his form morphing back to normal.
Evelyn chuckled. Oh, Asher.
You really think I wouldn't prepare for you? I set this trap the moment you walked back into the base. As soon as she spoke, a terrifying pressure filled the room, and Asher felt the presence of multiple assassins hidden in the shadows.
A trap, huh? Good.
He cracked his knuckles, his crimson aura flaring to life. Then let's see if your trap is enough to hold me. Asher formed his scythe as the assassins surrounded him, but suddenly,
Era.
a melodious voice rang out, laced with a pressure so intense that Asher's legs buckled beneath him, forcing him onto his knees. The force didn't just affect him, it sent shockwaves through the entire room, causing the other assassins, including Evelyn, to falter. Ha, you only kneeled, you are good, as they say. The voice belonged to a woman. As Asher lifted his head, he was met with the sight of an absurdly beautiful woman gazing down at him with an amused expression. She was unlike any other assassin present. Draped in a form-fitting black robe with crimson embroidery, her aura exuded overwhelming authority. Her golden eyes gleamed with intelligence, and her long silver hair cascaded over her shoulders like flowing silk.
Asher clicked his tongue.
He had fought powerful people above his ranks, but none of them were so powerful to force him to kneel, yet here he was, forced to his knees by a mere presence.
TCH.
Just what kind of absurdity have I gotten myself into? For a brief moment, as he observed her refined yet dangerous demeanor, a stray thought crossed his mind.
Fuck.
Am I into MILFs? Annoyed with himself, he shook the thought away and focused. Now wasn't the time to get distracted. Who are you? He asked, his voice calm despite the pressure weighing on him. The woman smirked, tilting her head slightly. Explore stories at my virtual library empire.
Me?
Oh, darling, I'm just someone who finds you interesting. Asher's grip on his scythe tightened. Don't get alarmed, love, she said, holding Asher's chin as she gazed into his crimson eyes. Ah, your eyes, they're like beautiful gems. I can almost feel myself craving them, plucking them out, and displaying them as decorations in my room, she mused with a teasing smile. Asher tried to move, but his whole body was paralyzed. Damn it. What kind of ability is this? He thought, gritting his teeth. Anyways, I got a little sidetracked on my way here, she continued. Mind telling me why there was killing intent just now? They tried to kill me, Asher said flatly, his eyes never leaving hers. She nodded as if that answer was completely reasonable. Her long silver hair swayed as she turned her head slightly. With a lazy glance, she took in the entire room, her mere presence commanding absolute authority. Even Evelyn, who had been orchestrating everything from the shadows, was frozen in place, unable to even breathe properly under Melina's presence. Melina then smiled as everyone except Asher bursted into blood shower. She killed them all with her mere gaze. Damn, I think the saying looks can kill came from you, Asher muttered, his voice laced with cold amusement. This made the woman chuckle.
Melina.
That's my name, she finally introduced herself, a smirk playing on her lips. And I don't need to ask questions when I can simply take the answers from those in front of me. With a flick of her wrist, a glass appeared in her hand, filled with crimson liquid. She swirled it gently before taking a sip, humming in satisfaction. Check this out, the taste is sweet, bold, and carries a hint of bitterness, much like life itself, she mused. Asher watched her, tilting his head slightly. Oops, I forgot you're still paralyzed, she chuckled. With a snap of her fingers, the pressure on his body lifted. Asher rolled his shoulders and stretched his neck, feeling control return to his limbs. I've come here to get you, by the way, Melina said casually. Asher narrowed his eyes. And who exactly are you? She smirked, leaning in closer. I'm from the guild. Melina, the Huntress, is my title. Your dear friend Selena came to find us, and that put your name on my radar, she revealed. Asher's eyes flickered. So, you're from the guild. Then why are you here? Melina grinned, baring her fangs.
Dead men don't need to know, she purred.
But thank you for the meal. Your fight was a feast for the senses.
Asher frowned. Am I in trouble? He wondered.
Melina giggled, then asked, So, what will you do now? You joined a terrorist organization despite being part of the guild. That's treason, no? She asked, her piercing gaze locked onto Asher. Asher sat calmly in front of her, completely unfazed. Who do you think leaked the information about this base? He asked back, a smirk tugging at his lips. Melina raised an eyebrow before chuckling. Ah, so you were the source of their downfall. She mused, swirling her drink. You are quite the interesting one. She leaned in slightly, her eyes glowing with intrigue. But you are odd, she remarked. Let's leave now, she said abruptly, standing up as Asher nodded. She led the way, and Asher followed after her. The entire underground base was painted red with blood and gore, the scent of death heavy in the air. You sure enjoy causing explosions, Asher remarked, stepping over a dismembered corpse. Melina chuckled, glancing back at him. You should be careful with your words, or you might end up decorating some wall in red too, she teased.
Asher shrugged.
At this point, it feels like I'm in some kind of fate I can't escape. But I'm not like you know.
Melina smirked.
We'll see about that, she said as they reached the entrance of the base. Coming out, Asher was greeted by many guild members. Around them, the remnants of the Red Fate base smoldered, and among the waiting crowd stood a revered individual, one of the guild's high-ranking officials. A cute-looking receptionist, who exuded an air of authority far beyond her appearance, stood at the center. Asher narrowed his eyes. Is she the one that made this monster bow to her? He found it hard to believe, yet here was Melina bowing respectfully. Guildmaster, Melina greeted with a slight nod. Guildmaster, Melina greeted with a slight nod. The receptionist, Regent Genevieve, acknowledged her, her voice calm but commanding. You have done good work. We now have leverage over Red Fate. Her gaze shifted toward Asher, her sharp eyes analyzing him.
And you, Asher. You did well.
But it was reckless move, she added as Asher shrugged. Asher merely shrugged, unfazed by the comment. Reckless, sure, but effective. Genevieve narrowed her eyes slightly, but there was a hint of amusement in them. Effectiveness doesn't excuse carelessness. If you had failed, you would have died, and we would have lost a valuable asset.
Asset?
Asher repeated, scoffing. I don't recall signing up to be someone's pawn. You're not a pawn, Genevieve corrected, but you are someone with potential, and potential must be cultivated, not squandered. She turned and gestured for him to follow. Come. There are things we must discuss in private.
Melina smirked at Asher. She likes you.
Asher rolled his eyes but followed Genevieve nonetheless. The group walked through the guild hall, past curious onlookers whispering about the recent events. Some murmured his name with admiration, others with wariness. His infiltration and destruction of Red Fate's base had spread fast. Finally, they entered a large chamber, the doors shutting behind them. Genevieve took a seat behind a grand wooden desk, fingers tapping against the surface as she studied him. Tell me, Asher, what do you intend to do next?
What do you mean?
Asher asked as she looked at him. Do you know how many spies we've sent to infiltrate Red Fate? Yet none were able to locate their base. But you did it easily, as if the curse placed on it never worked.
Curse?
Asher raised an eyebrow. Oh, you mean that blessing-like one? Well, it did affect me, but I turned my body into blood and protected myself from the piercing spikes that grew out of me, he explained, shrugging as if it was nothing. Genevieve sighed. I guess that was the loophole they never thought of. Complete elementalization of one's body is a powerful concept, one that only a few geniuses can even begin to understand. That's why we needed spies with such capabilities. She leaned back in her chair. I've noticed something, Asher. You are surging through the ranks unnaturally fast. Asher remained silent, listening as she continued. When we first met, you were just an A ranker. Now, in mere months, you've reached SS rank. Even if you're talented, such rapid growth isn't always a good thing, she warned, watching his reaction closely.
Asher simply nodded.
My foundation is as strong as adamantium thanks to my abilities. Of course, you wouldn't know that. He inwardly thought to himself before replying, I advanced so fast because I obtained a legacy, one from a place called the God of War's Cavern. After defeating him, he passed his powers to me, which led to my rapid growth. Genevieve's eyes narrowed slightly. You passed the War God's trial? That is something remarkable. She paused before adding, "We have information on at least 3 more War God trial locations. If you're willing to share where you found yours, we can offer you the coordinates of one in exchange. As for the remaining 2, you may have to take on similar tasks for the guild." Asher leaned back in his chair, intrigued. 3 more War God trial locations. Genevieve nodded. "What about the rewards?
Are they predetermined?" he asked. She shook her head.
War God trials are randomized. Even if 2 people enter the same trial ground, they won't necessarily receive the same reward. We don't know if there's a final one or a specific grand reward. What we do know is that only those who pass these trials are considered geniuses. She gave him a knowing look. "And now, thanks to passing one, you've been added to that list." "Have you passed one?" Asher asked as he eyed her. "All 3, Genevieve replied, crossing her arms. Asher raised an eyebrow. "I see, so the guild was in cahoots with Red Fate, and you were working as a spy there?"
She nodded. "Yes.
"We had reports of advanced rank adventurers going missing, yet the guild's branch wasn't doing anything.
So they sent me.
I infiltrated their ranks and remained until I was appointed as a suitable leader."
Asher nodded in understanding.
"So, are you willing to share the location of your trial?" she asked. Asher nodded and said while giving her the location. "Reaching one is difficult, you know." She let out a small chuckle. "All War God trials are like that. The first test is always reaching the War God, that alone determines whether you're worthy." She leaned forward slightly, handing him a slip of paper. "Choose your location carefully." Asher took the map and examined it. "Each one is set in a different type of terrain, just like the one you gave me," she explained. He scanned the 3 marked locations.
A volcanic region. A poisonous swamp.
A land covered in black shadows, shrouded in eternal darkness. After a moment of consideration, Asher tapped the poisonous swamp.
"I'll choose this one," he said.
Thanks to his abilities, he was immune to toxins, making it the most strategic choice. Genevieve nodded as she took the map back.
"A wise choice."
"The poisonous swamp may be treacherous, but if you have immunity to toxins, it will give you an advantage."
However,
she narrowed her eyes. "The War God's trials are never as simple as they seem. Poison may not be your biggest challenge there."
Asher smirked.
"I wouldn't expect it to be easy. If it was, it wouldn't be worth my time." Melina, who had been quietly observing the exchange, chuckled. "I like your confidence, but don't get cocky. The War God doesn't just test strength, he tests resolve. You'll have to prove you're worthy of wielding his techniques." "I already proved myself once," Asher said, cracking his knuckles. "I'll do it again." Genevieve handed him a sealed envelope. "This will grant you passage through the guild's restricted zones. There are creatures in the poisonous swamp even S-rank adventurers avoid. Don't get careless." Genevieve handed him a sealed envelope. "This will grant you passage through the guild's restricted zones. There are creatures in the poisonous swamp even S-rank adventurers avoid. Don't get careless." Asher nodded as he leaned in slightly as he asked, "Who is this crazy bitch?" He asked, pointing at Melina. Genevieve sighed. "She's crazy, but she's one of our transcendent rank adventurers. Don't mind her too much. Her ability causes her target's bones to explode. It's like she has adapted to her absurd ability, though others haven't. After all, it's quite unorthodox."
Asher nodded. Bone bomb, huh?"
"Though, if I were to guess, I'd think it was more like bone manipulation." Genevieve shook her head.
"It's just bone bomb."
"We thought it might be some form of bone manipulation too, but when we tried to help her control it, every test ended with explosions. So, after many trials, we confirmed that her ability is simply bone bomb, a variant of bone manipulation." Asher nodded in understanding. "And that's the reason she's always alone. Though it has helped her rise in ranks and become independent so that she doesn't have to rely on others," Genevieve said before adding, "Don't think badly of her. She longs for others, but most are scared of her. After all it takes is for her to look at her target, and she can make their bones explode. Her personality is different, not bad or evil, just unique."
Asher nodded. "It's okay. I've met more evil ones."
Genevieve chuckled.
"I know.
"And I've run away from them myself," she said with a smirk. "Where is Serena?"
Asher asked.
Genevieve responded, "She's back at the guild. She insisted on coming with us, but we stopped her.
She's too weak after all."
Asher nodded in understanding. "I guess I'm going then," Asher said. Genevieve nodded. "Just be careful from now on," she warned. "I'm always careful, But others don't let me be, he replied with a smirk. Genevieve just laughed and let him go. Asher stepped out and spotted Melina sitting nearby, swinging her legs while surveying the captured Red Fate members. Thank you for saving me, she said. Oh, it was my job after all, Melina replied, waving her hand dismissively. Then, with a sly smile, she added, but if you really want to thank me, how about letting me have those eyes of yours?
Asher shook his head.
I can't give them to you, but you can have this, he said, taking out a small vial.
What's this?
Melina asked, examining the vial in her hand. It's an Empyrean vampire essence. I removed the vampirism from it. If you drink it, you'll acquire the abilities of an Empyrean vampire without actually turning into one.
You'll remain human, Asher explained.
Unlike the vials he had laced with traps for the Red Fate victims, this one was pure, with no harmful side effects. Are you sure you want to give this to me? Melina asked, raising a brow. Asher simply took a step back and activated his blood ruler ability, causing the blood in his hand to shift and swirl. My ability is blood ruler. Do you think I need the blood-related abilities of an Empyrean vampire? He asked. Melina watched the blood change forms in his palm before nodding. Okay, I'll take it, she said, pocketing the vial. As he turned to leave, she grabbed his hand. Do you need anything else? He asked, turning.
Just your name, Melina said.
Asher Magnus is my name, he replied.
Melina Coyer.
Nice to meet you, Asher Magnus, she replied with a grin.
Asher nodded.
It was my pleasure, he said as he walked away. Melina watched Asher walk away, a curious expression crossing her face. What a weird kid. He wasn't afraid of me, she thought, tilting her head slightly. Most people either avoided her or feared her abilities, yet Asher had treated her like any other person. That alone made him stand out in her mind. She shrugged off the thought and went back to her job, monitoring the captured Red Fate members. Yet, from time to time, her gaze drifted toward the direction Asher had gone. Even after he disappeared from sight, she found herself still thinking about him. Asher rushed to the guild, where he found Serena pouting in the corner. Yo, did someone bully you? He asked casually, leaning against the wall. Serena snapped her head toward him, glaring fiercely. You bastard! You're the one who bullied me! She shouted, drawing the attention of others nearby. Asher sighed dramatically. Sheesh, keep your voice down, or you'll summon the crows to harass me. Serena huffed, crossing her arms, but she didn't say anything further. I told you I was fine, so why are you sulking now? Asher asked, raising an eyebrow. Serena exhaled sharply, her frustration evident. Who cares about you? I was waiting for the one who promised to not risk his life anymore. Her voice trembled slightly, and Asher noticed her eyes looked a bit teary.
He sighed.
Okay. I'm sorry. He reached out, patting her head lightly. Serena slapped his hand away. Why did you even go there? Why act as a spy for the guild? Asher leaned back, shrugging. I went because I saw an opportunity. I didn't do it for the guild, I just wanted to grow stronger quickly. Serena frowned, her expression filled with concern. Why? Why are you so much in rush to grow stronger? She asked as Asher fell silent. Why? 'Cause I want to return back to Volarisa, he inwardly thought as he looked at her.
He sighed again.
I'll tell you everything when the time is right.
Serena hesitated, then nodded. Fine.
But you better keep your promise. Asher chuckled, ruffling Serena's hair despite her protests. Relax, I'll keep my promise. You'll know it soon enough. Serena slapped his hand away again, scowling. Stop treating me like a kid. Then stop acting like one, Asher shrugged. Annoyed, Serena pounced on him and began to harshly ruffle his hair. Who's the kid now? She asked smugly. Annoyed, Serena pounced on him and began to harshly ruffle his hair. Who's the kid now? She asked smugly. Everyone is watching.
Who is it?
Asher responded casually, causing her to pause. She looked around and noticed that many people in the tavern were staring at her with amused smiles. Embarrassed, she quickly let go and returned to her seat, her face turning red as if blood might drain from her any moment. She just sat there, bowing her head, too shy to say anything to him. Asher left her be and made his way to the quest board. Since I'm going to the 10,000 Poison Lands, might as well take a quest from there. He scanned the board and picked one. Violet Blood Flower Collection.
A rank quest.
This will do. The 10,000 Poison Lands, a treacherous region filled with deadly flora, venomous beasts and toxic air, was also the rumored location of one of the war god's trials. Since Asher was already planning to head there, He figured he might as well take on a quest related to the area. Might as well make some extra profit while I'm at it, he muttered, glancing at the quest details. The violet bloodflower was a rare plant that only grew in the most poisonous areas, making it an A-rank mission. With the quest accepted, Asher prepared himself for the journey ahead. Want to come with me? Asher asked, reaching back toward Serena, whose face was still flushed with embarrassment from earlier. She hesitated, her fingers gripping the hem of her cloak.
Humph.
Why would I want to go with you? She huffed, turning her head away.
Asher smirked.
Well, I figured you'd want to get stronger. Or are you just going to sit here sulking? Serena's eye twitched. TCH. Fine, but if I die, I'm haunting you.
Asher chuckled. Deal.
Let's move out. Serena sighed, adjusting her gear as she followed Asher out of the guild. So, where exactly are we going? She asked, still slightly annoyed but clearly curious. 10,000 Poison Land, Asher replied casually. Serena stopped in her tracks.
Wait, what? She shouted, eyes wide.
That place is a death trap.
Are you insane? Asher shrugged. Probably.
But that's where one of the war god trials is, and I just picked up a quest for a violet bloodflower while I'm at it.
Thought you'd want in.
Serena pinched the bridge of her nose. You're unbelievable. Yet you're still coming, Asher teased with a grin. She grumbled but didn't argue further. Fine, but if we die, it's your fault. I'll take full responsibility, Asher said, smirking as they set off toward their next deadly destination. Asher and Serena made their way out of the guild, heading toward the teleportation gate that would take them to the outskirts of the 10,000 Poison Land. The journey was relatively quiet at first, until Serena finally broke the silence. So, what exactly is this war god trial you're after? Asher glanced at her.
Not sure.
From what I've gathered, each trial is different. It's supposed to test a person's combat ability, willpower, and adaptability. Survive, pass, and you gain the war god's recognition.
Fail.
He trailed off, shrugging. Serena narrowed her eyes. And failing means?
Death. Probably. Serena groaned. Of course it does.
Why am I even surprised? They reached the teleportation gate, where a few adventurers turned their heads, overhearing their conversation. Wait, did that guy just say he's heading to 10,000 Poison Land? TCH, another idiot with a death wish.
That place is cursed.
Even high-rank adventurers barely make it out alive. Ignoring the murmurs, Asher stepped forward and paid the teleportation fee. With a bright flash of light, he and Serena were transported to the boundary of one of the deadliest locations in the world. The air immediately changed, thick with toxins, the sky a sickly shade of purple. The ground beneath them was cracked, covered in patches of withered plants oozing strange liquids. The scent of decay and venom lingered everywhere.
Serena coughed.
Ugh, this place is disgusting. Asher took a deep breath, unaffected. You'll get used to it.
She shot him a glare.
I don't want to get used to it. Asher smirked and started walking.
Then don't fall behind.
Asher, walking ahead, snapped his fingers, creating a blood barrier around him. This will protect us from the poison, he said, his voice calm as he observed the toxic air around them. Then, with a faint smirk, he added, and it will also allow me to assimilate the 10,000 kinds of poison found in this place into my blood. Serena stared at him in disbelief. Do you even hear yourself when you talk? Asher merely chuckled, his crimson eyes glinting with excitement as he studied the map given to him by Genevieve. He traced the route with his fingers, noting the locations of deadly creatures, traps, and the supposed trial grounds for the war god's challenge. This way, he muttered, leading the path deeper into the poisonous wasteland. Serena, still wary, followed behind, gripping her weapon tightly. If I die because of your crazy ideas, I'm haunting you. Noted, Asher replied with an amused tone, unfazed by the dangers ahead. After a moment, they reached the place, a massive black water lake. The surface was eerily still, reflecting the dark sky above. We need keys for war god trial, Asher muttered as he examined the area. Serena led him forward. Keys are some creature's head, she answered, stepping cautiously.
Asher nodded.
Yes, the war god's trials need foresight, as well as action, to activate.
He glanced around.
And one of the conditions here is to bring the head of the Black Water King, a massive slumbering centipede with countless legs and a poisonous tail. It's said that even an elder tree, a magical tree with highly concentrated sap that can heal even grave injuries, would wither from its venom. Serena tensed, gripping her weapon. So, how do we kill something like that?
Asher smirked.
We wake it up first. Serena stared at him in disbelief.
Wake it up? Are you insane?
Asher simply grinned. Insanity is just a perspective. Besides, we need its head, and I doubt it'll just hand it over. Before Serena could protest, Asher raised his hand, forming a crimson blade from his own blood. He took a step forward, then without hesitation, hurled the blade into the lake.
For a moment, there was silence.
The water rippled where the blade had sunk, and then,
boom!
The entire lake exploded upwards as something massive stirred beneath the surface. Water cascaded like a storm as a monstrous form rose from the depths, its colossal, segmented body writhing, hundreds of gleaming black legs skittering across the ground. The Black Water King had awakened. Its eyes, like pools of liquid void, locked onto them. A deep, rumbling hiss echoed through the air, thick with poison. The creature lunged, its massive, venom-coated mandibles snapping toward Asher.
Serena cursed, leaping back.
You really woke it up, you lunatic. Asher smirked, blood-red energy crackling around him.
Well, no turning back now. Let's kill a king.
The Black Water King let out a screech, its massive, centipede-like body thrashing as waves of poisonous water crashed onto the land. The ground sizzled where the toxic liquid touched, melting through stone like acid. Serena quickly conjured a barrier of wind, shielding herself from the deadly spray. You're paying for this if we die, Asher, she yelled. Asher laughed, his blood-forged blade elongating into a spear. If we die, I'll cover the funeral costs. He charged forward, using his blood-enhanced speed to weave through the beast's attacks. The Black Water King whipped its tail, a spiked appendage covered in pulsating poison sacs. Asher sidestepped, barely dodging as the tail smashed into the ground, sending toxic shrapnel flying. Serena blasted upward, hovering above the battlefield with her wind magic. We need to target its head. The war god's trial requires it.
Yeah, no kidding.
Asher shot back, forming a dozen blood lances midair before launching them at the creature's glowing eyes. The beast roared as the lances pierced into its skull, black ichor oozing from the wounds. But instead of slowing down, it only grew more enraged, its poison levels spiking to the point where the very air became toxic mist. Serena coughed, covering her mouth. If this keeps up, we'll be dead before we land a killing blow.
Asher smirked.
Then we just have to kill it faster. He took a deep breath, his veins glowing crimson as he activated his blood ruin mode, his power surging as his own blood boiled into a state of temporary overdrive. His skin cracked, turning deep red, and his eyes burned like molten rubies. Let's end this, Serena. Serena gritted her teeth and nodded, her hands glowing with pure, concentrated wind magic. Together, they launched their final attack. Being a king at an X-rank land meant that the Black Water King was at the peak of its rank, making it an X-rank creature. Asher pushed himself to the limits of his Sanguine Supreme ability, discarding the use of any other abilities and relying solely on his bloodborne power, wanting to see the limit of his Sanguine Supreme ability. Both of their attack landed, but it didn't do much to Centipede. You should rest aside now, you did all you could with your rank capability, he said as she looked at him. The air grew heavy with an ominous pressure as Asher's blood surged, his veins glowing a deep crimson. The Black Water King roared, its massive form thrashing against the lake's surface, sending waves of toxic water crashing in every direction. Serena leaped back, knowing she couldn't interfere in this moment. This was Asher's fight now. A sphere of dense blood formed around him, pulsating with raw power. He could feel it, his Sanguine Supreme ability pushing beyond its previous limits. His blood was no longer just a weapon, it was evolving, adapting, resonating with the immense toxicity of the 10,000 poison land. The Black Water King lunged, its poison-dripping claws slashing toward him. Instead of dodging, Asher let the attack connect, only for the creature's own poison to be absorbed into his blood. His body trembled as he assimilated it, feeling the deadly venom merge with his own essence. So, I really can absorb even this, he muttered, his lips curling into a grin. The Black Water King hesitated for the first time. It sensed something was wrong. Its greatest weapon, its lethal poison, was no longer a threat to Asher. Now, let's see how much more I can take, Asher said, stepping forward, his aura darkening as his blood began to twist and morph into something new. The Black Water King let out a guttural snarl, its instinct screaming at it to retreat. But Asher wasn't going to let it. With a flick of his wrist, his blood shot forward like whips, latching onto the beast's limbs. The Black Water King thrashed violently, trying to shake him off, but Asher dug his feet into the poison ground, his power surging. His blood wasn't just absorbing the poison anymore, it was refining it. A dark crimson glow pulsed around him as his veins burned with an overwhelming surge of energy. His Sanguine Supreme ability was evolving in real time, adapting to the toxins, breaking them down, and reconstructing them into something far deadlier.
Let's test this out, Asher murmured.
He clenched his fist, and in an instant, the blood tendrils wrapped around the Black Water King tightened, turning pitch black. The beast screeched as its own poison was turned against it, seeping into its body like an unstoppable plague. Its limbs convulsed, its body beginning to melt from the inside. Serena watched in stunned silence, her breath caught in her throat. This wasn't just a simple battle anymore. Asher was rewriting the very nature of his abilities mid-fight. The Black Water King's body started to collapse, its massive form breaking apart as the corrosive blood continued to eat away at it. It tried to resist, but Asher's control was absolute. With one final, agonized roar, the Black Water King fell silent, its body sinking into the blackened waters.
A moment of stillness followed.
Asher let out a slow breath, his body steaming from the overwhelming energy coursing through him. He looked down at his hands, flexing them as the last remnants of poison-infused blood dripped from his fingers. That was interesting, he muttered, a smirk tugging at his lips. Serena, still standing at a safe distance, finally spoke. You just killed an X-rank beast with its own poison." Asher rolled his shoulders. "More like, I made it kill itself."
"How?"
Serena asked, looking at him, unsure of what to say. As a healer back in her village, she knew that most poisonous or venomous creatures had immunity to their own poison. Yet, Asher had made one die from its own toxins.
"How?"
Serena asked, looking at him, unsure of what to say. As a healer back in her village, she knew that most poisonous or venomous creatures had immunity to their own poison. Yet, Asher had made one die from its own toxins.
It's not that hard if you know enough about them," Asher said.
These venomous or poisonous creatures have a protective inner layer that saves them from their own toxins. Once you pierce through it, their own poison can kill them. It's as simple as that. Serena nodded slowly, processing his explanation. Serena let out a breath, still amazed by the way Asher had handled the creature.
"Simple, huh?" she muttered.
"You make it sound easy, but I doubt anyone else could pull that off so effortlessly."
Asher smirked.
"Well, that's what makes me special." He turned his gaze back to the massive corpse of the Black Water King. "Now, let's get what we came for." Approaching the beast's remains, Asher carefully extracted the item they needed, a dark, pulsating core from deep within its chest. The moment he touched it, a strange energy surged through his body, sending a tingling sensation through his veins. Serena stepped closer. "Is that the key to the War God's trial?"
"Looks like it."
Asher examined the core, watching as faint runes flickered across its surface. "This thing contains some serious power. I can feel it trying to resonate with me."
Serena frowned.
"You should be careful. If it's reacting to you, it might mean the trial has already started."
Asher grinned, unfazed. "Good.
That means we're on the right track." With the Black Water King defeated and the first key in hand, they prepared to move forward, toward the next step of the War God's trial. The next target was another king, this one residing in the Western Zone. Each king occupied a specific territory. Just as the Black Water King had ruled the Northern Zone, the Western Zone belonged to the king of illusory death, the Deathfly. Basically, it was a monstrous beast that could release a toxic dust capable of trapping its victims in an endless dream. While they remained helpless in their induced slumber, the Deathfly would slowly devour them, feeding on both their body and soul. Asher studied the map Genevieve had given him, pinpointing the location of the Deathfly's lair. "So, this thing feeds off people's dreams? Sounds like a pain to deal with." Serena crossed her arms.
"It's worse than that.
The poison it releases doesn't just put you to sleep, it traps you in a nightmare. The more you struggle, the deeper you fall into the illusion. Eventually, you lose yourself completely."
Asher smirked.
"A tricky ability, but not unbeatable. I just have to make sure it never gets the chance to use it on me." Serena sighed. "Easier said than done. The Deathfly's dust spreads over a huge area. Even if you don't breathe it in, it can seep into your skin and paralyze you." "Then I'll just have to kill it before it can use its poison," Asher said confidently. Serena shot him a skeptical look. "You really think you can kill something before it even has a chance to act?" Asher's grin widened. "I don't think I know." With that, the two of them set off toward the Western Zone, ready to hunt down their next target. As they moved westward, the environment around them began to shift. The air grew thick with a strange shimmering haze, and the landscape took on an eerie, distorted appearance. Trees twisted in unnatural ways, their shadows stretching and moving as if alive. The very ground beneath them seemed to shift slightly with each step, creating the unsettling sensation of walking through a dream. Serena narrowed her eyes. "We're already in its domain," she whispered. "The Deathfly's illusion has started." Asher cracked his knuckles. "Good. Saves us the trouble of searching for it." Serena sighed. "You're way too confident." Then, without warning, a sharp high-pitched hum filled the air. The sound was disorienting, vibrating through their skulls like an echoing scream. Serena winced, clutching her head, while Asher simply tilted his head as if analyzing the sound. "That must be its hunting call," Serena said through gritted teeth. "It's already starting the illusion." Asher exhaled, his breath visible even in the warm air. "I see. It's not just the dust, it's the sound too. This thing really likes trapping its prey, huh?" Serena's vision blurred for a moment. The world around them rippled, colors distorting as if the air itself were made of liquid. Then, out of the shifting haze, massive moth-like wings emerged. The king of illusory death revealed itself, a monstrous, nightmarish fusion of a butterfly and a corpse. Its translucent wings radiated a hypnotic glow, pulsating in a slow, steady rhythm, as if lulling the world to sleep. Its skeletal body, wrapped in ghostly tendrils, hovered just above them, its empty eyes fixated on its next meal. Serena's knees wobbled. "It's trying to pull us in. If we fall asleep now, we're done." Asher smirked. "Then I just won't fall asleep." With a snap of his fingers, a thin layer of blood mist erupted around him, shielding his skin from the airborne toxins. His sanguine supreme ability worked in overdrive, filtering out every trace of foreign substance that tried to invade his system. "Serena, get behind me," he ordered. "I'll keep you awake." She hesitated, but as the Deathfly's glow intensified, she could feel her body growing sluggish. She nodded quickly and took cover behind Asher. The Deathfly let out another shrill cry, its wings releasing a fresh burst of shimmering dust. The illusion intensified. Suddenly, the sky cracked open, revealing a horrifying scene: a graveyard of corpses, each one a perfect copy of Asher and Serena, lifeless and rotting. Serena's breath hitched. This isn't real." But before she could say anything else, the corpses began to move. One of them, an exact replica of Asher, lifted its head, its hollow eyes staring directly at them. Then, in a hauntingly familiar voice, it spoke. "You can't win." Serena froze. The illusion was starting to consume them. Asher, however, only chuckled. Then, he lunged. His blood ignited like wildfire, forming crimson blades around his hands as he charged directly at the Deathfly. "Nice trick," he said, eyes gleaming with excitement. "Let's see if you can keep up." The Deathfly flapped its massive wings, releasing another wave of shimmering dust that warped the very air around them. The illusion deepened, the sky darkened, the ground cracked apart, and spectral figures of the dead crawled up from the abyss, whispering in distorted voices. "Sleep. Rest. Give in." Serena gritted her teeth, shaking her head to resist the lull of the illusions, but her limbs felt heavy. Every breath she took was laced with poison, sinking her deeper into the hallucination. "Asher," she called, but when she turned to look at him, she froze. Before her, dozens of Ashers stood in a circle, surrounding her. Each one bore the same smirk, the same glowing crimson eyes. But only one was real. The Deathfly had already infiltrated her mind. "Which one is your ally? Choose wrong and you'll die." The whispers clawed at her thoughts. Serena's heart pounded. The weight of the illusions pressed down on her, trying to force her into unconsciousness. If she passed out now, the Deathfly would consume her entire existence. But Asher wasn't stopping. He moved like a crimson blur, weaving through the distorted battlefield. Every illusion, every shifting shape, none of it fazed him. Because he wasn't seeing them at all. "Ha! Cheap tricks," Asher scoffed, snapping his fingers. A pulse of blood energy erupted from his body, sending shockwaves through the illusionary realm. The false Ashers flickered and vanished instantly. Serena gasped. "You how?" Asher tilted his head. "I told you. I don't fall asleep." The Deathfly screeched, realizing that its mind tricks weren't working on him. It flapped its wings frantically, shifting its strategy. Suddenly, the air itself began to shift, gravity twisted, and the battlefield turned upside down. Serena's footing wobbled as she suddenly found herself falling into the sky. "Your mind is mine now." The Deathfly's voice echoed through the void. Serena screamed as she plummeted into the abyss, until Asher's hand grabbed her wrist. She looked up, eyes wide. Asher was floating in midair, completely unfazed by the shift in gravity.
He smirked down at her. "Wake up, Serena."
Then, with a single pull, he yanked her back to reality. The illusions shattered like glass. The battlefield returned to normal. The deathfly reeled back in shock, its glowing wings flickering, its power weakening.
"Enough of this."
Asher's voice was calm, but his eyes gleamed with a crimson light. He stretched out his hand, and suddenly, his blood moved. The crimson mist surrounding him shot forward like a spear, piercing straight through the deathfly's translucent wings. The creature shrieked in agony, its body twisting as Asher's blood invaded its system. Serena's breath caught in her throat. "Did you just?"
Asher smirked. "Yeah."
"I'm poisoning it with its own toxins." The deathfly convulsed violently. Its own deadly poison was now coursing through its veins, turning against it. Within seconds, its massive body withered and crumbled, dissolving into the very mist it had once controlled. The once mighty king of illusory death was dead. Serena collapsed to her knees, panting. That was insane. Asher shrugged, wiping his hands.
"Told you."
Nothing to worry about. Then, without hesitation, he reached down and ripped off the deathfly's severed head.
Serena stared.
You could at least wait until I catch my breath." Asher simply chuckled, holding up the head like a trophy.
"2 down," he said. 2 more to go."
"Next are the eastern million spike worm and the southern purple mist lion," Asher said. Serena nodded, adding, "One is armed with poison needles, and the other is armed with a poison mist." She shivered slightly. "Both are dangerous." "I choose the needle one," Asher decided without hesitation. Serena sighed but nodded, accepting his choice. Without wasting time, they began their journey toward the eastern side of the 10,000 poison land. The eastern wastelands, the lair of the million spike worm. The land here was a vast, cracked wasteland, covered in jagged rock formations and deep burrows. The sky was tinted a sickly green, and the ground itself seemed to pulse with a toxic aura. Serena covered her nose. "The air is thick with venom." Asher, on the other hand, breathed it in without a care. "Perfect place for a nap," he said lazily. Serena glared at him. "We're in a death zone, Asher." Before he could respond, the ground trembled. A deep guttural rumble echoed through the wasteland, and then, the earth cracked apart. Something massive began to rise from the depths. A monstrous worm, easily the size of a castle, burst out from the ground, its entire body covered in shimmering, needle-like spines. Its segmented body twisted unnaturally, and as it moved, its spikes quivered, each one dripping with a thick black poison. Serena clenched her fists. "That thing is covered in millions of poisoned needles. How do we even get close?" Asher smirked, cracking his knuckles. "Easy." Without another word, he vanished. Serena barely had time to blink before Asher reappeared above the worm's head, his fist glowing red with concentrated blood energy. "You're not the only one with spikes." With a snap of his fingers, countless crimson spears erupted from his body, shooting toward the worm at terrifying speed. The million spike worm screeched as the blood spears clashed against its poison spines, breaking some on impact but failing to penetrate deep enough to do real damage.
"TCH. Tough shell." Asher muttered.
The worm lurched forward, its body spinning at high speed. A storm of poison needles rained down like a deadly barrage. Serena's eyes widened. "Asher, move." But instead of dodging, Asher raised his hand. A thin layer of crimson mist spread around him in an instant. The moment the poisoned needles entered the mist, they stopped.
No, they didn't just stop.
They floated midair, trembling, before slowly dissolving into red liquid.
Serena gasped.
"You absorbed them?"
Asher grinned.
"Why waste good poison?" The million spike worm screeched in confusion, realizing its own weapons were being turned against it. Asher clenched his fist, and his own blood turned dark. "Time to see how you like your own venom." With a single motion, he sent the absorbed poison hurtling back at the worm. The black liquid shot forward like a bullet, piercing through the worm's tough hide with ease. The creature shuddered violently as its own lethal poison invaded its system. It let out one last shriek before collapsing with a heavy thud, its massive body convulsing before finally going still. Serena exhaled in disbelief. "You just poisoned a creature that's immune to poison." Asher wiped his hands off. "Yep. 3 down, 1 to go." He turned, walking toward the worm's severed head, ready to claim his trophy.
Serena groaned.
"At least let me catch my breath first." Asher ignored Serena's complaints as he approached the corpse of the million spike worm. The body was still twitching, releasing faint hisses of toxic steam from the punctured wounds. With a flick of his wrist, Asher coated his hand in blood energy and reached into the worm's head. A moment later, he pulled out a black, crystallized core, pulsing with eerie venomous energy. You have obtained the Venom Heart Core, Million Spike Worm. Serena peered over his shoulder. Is that the key? One of them, Asher confirmed, inspecting the pulsating core. The War God's trial needs the heads of 4 kings.
This should count.
Serena crossed her arms. You could at least pretend this was difficult.
Asher shrugged. I could.
But that'd be lying. Serena rolled her eyes but let it slide. All right, what's next?
Boom.
Before Asher could answer, a distant explosion echoed from the southern horizon. The sky trembled, and a thick purple mist began to rise in the distance, swallowing entire trees and hills. Serena's face paled. The purple mist lion.
Asher smirked.
Looks like it already knows we're coming. Southward, the domain of the purple mist lion. The land shifted as they traveled south. The rocky wasteland gave way to dense, twisted forests, where thick purple fog slithered between the trees. The deeper they went, the harder it became to breathe. The air was heavy with a sweet but deadly scent, and even Serena, with her resistance as a healer, felt her limbs turning sluggish. Asher, this mist is too thick, she warned.
He glanced at her. Then stay close.
Serena narrowed her eyes but didn't argue. With a flick of his finger, Asher manipulated his blood energy, forming a thin red veil around them. The moment the mist touched the crimson barrier, it sizzled and evaporated. Serena let out a relieved sigh.
Thanks.
Before Asher could reply, a deep growl rumbled from the fog.
The trees trembled.
The mist shifted unnaturally. And then, glowing purple eyes appeared from the darkness. The purple mist lion stepped forward, its massive black-furred body lined with violet markings. Its mane was a swirling mass of toxic fog, constantly shifting and curling like living smoke.
Serena stiffened. It's beautiful.
Asher cracked his knuckles. Let's see if it's durable.
The lion roared.
The entire forest exploded into chaos. Serena barely had time to raise a barrier before the mist surged forward like a living tide, swallowing everything in its path.
Asher grinned. Come on then, kitty.
Let's see who breathes last. The thick fog churned violently, expanding outward like an unstoppable force. Even with Asher's blood barrier, the sheer density of the poison was overwhelming. The purple mist lion didn't lunge immediately. Instead, it paced within the mist, its glowing eyes locking onto Asher. This wasn't a mindless beast, it was analyzing its prey. Serena tightened her grip on her staff. Asher, be careful. That thing isn't just strong, it's intelligent.
Asher smirked.
That just makes it more fun.
Whoosh.
In an instant, the lion disappeared into the fog. Serena's eyes darted around.
Where did? Slash.
A black claw streaked out from the mist, aiming straight for Asher's throat. Asher barely tilted his head in time, the razor-sharp claws grazing past his neck. A thin cut appeared, but before the lion could retract its paw, crimson chains erupted from Asher's blood. They wrapped around the beast's leg, tightening instantly.
Got you, Asher muttered.
The lion roared furiously, the mist around it intensifying. Its mane burned with venomous energy, and within moments, the toxic mist began corroding the blood chains.
Asher's grin widened.
So your poison eats away at living matter? The chains shattered. The lion lunged again, but Asher was already moving.
Boom.
With a single explosive step, Asher vanished from sight, reappearing above the lion. He twisted his body in midair, gathering blood energy into his fist. Sanguine Supreme, Blood Ruin Fist. Crash. His punch connected directly with the lion's skull, sending a shockwave through the air. The sheer force split the ground beneath them, creating a crater. Serena shielded herself from the debris, gasping. Did that do it?
Roar.
The lion shot out of the dust cloud, barely injured. Its mist flared violently, and its body split into 3 identical clones, surrounding Asher.
Illusions. Asher murmured.
Serena's eyes widened.
No.
Those are all real. Asher cracked his neck.
Perfect. More to kill.
The 3 purple mist lions circled Asher, their glowing eyes flickering like dying embers in the dense, toxic fog. Serena tightened her grip on her staff, her mind racing. How can there be 3? Is this another ability of the poison mist lion? Asher, however, wasn't fazed. Instead, his blood-red aura flared up, casting an eerie glow through the mist.
Whoosh.
One of the lions lunged from behind, its fangs bared, dripping with venom.
Clang!
A crimson blood blade formed in Asher's hand, intercepting the attack just in time. The impact sent shockwaves through the mist, dispersing a portion of the thick poison cloud.
Serena coughed.
The mist is getting stronger. If we don't end this fast, we'll be suffocated. Asher's gaze flickered toward the two other lions, both preparing to pounce.
He smirked.
Let's see if all three of you can handle this. Sanguine Supreme, Blood Field. The moment he whispered those words, the ground beneath them turned crimson. The blood Asher had spilled in battle reacted instantly, spreading out in thin, web-like veins that pulsed with life. The lions hesitated. Then, boom! Blood spikes erupted from the ground beneath one of the lions, impaling it instantly. The beast roared in agony before its body melted into mist. Blood spikes erupted from the ground beneath one of the lions, impaling it instantly. The beast roared in agony before its body melted into mist. Serena gasped. That one was an illusion. The remaining two pounced at the same time, one from the left, one from above.
Asher grinned.
Then let's see if these are real. He vanished just before the attacks landed.
Whoosh!
Reappearing above the airborne lion, Asher drove his knee into its back, sending it crashing down into the poison-soaked earth. But the moment it landed,
squelch!
Blood tendrils burst from the ground, coiling around its limbs like living chains. The lion struggled, thrashing violently, but Asher raised his hand. Crack! The blood tendrils tightened mercilessly, shattering the lion's bones in a sickening crunch.
Serena winced.
That one was real. The last remaining lion stood motionless, watching its fallen brethren dissolve into blood-soaked mist. Asher wiped a trickle of blood from his lip. Only one left. The lion growled lowly, its mist swirling aggressively, condensing into a single point. Serena's face paled.
Asher, move. It's... Boom!
The mist exploded outward, forming a massive shockwave of pure, concentrated venom. Everything it touched melted. The trees, the rocks, even the corpses of other creatures in the area dissolved into sludge. Asher stood firm, his crimson aura shielding him, but even his sanguine supreme ability trembled against the sheer toxicity. A final desperate attack, huh? He muttered, his breath turning misty from the fumes.
Then, with a smirk,
let me show you what real blood mastery looks like. Sanguine Supreme, Crimson Devourer. The blood on the battlefield surged toward Asher, twisting and condensing into a single monstrous form behind him. It had no defined shape, just a writhing, ever-shifting mass of crimson tendrils, eyes and fanged mouths. The Crimson Devourer opened its maw, and inhaled. The toxic mist, the rotting remains, even the last lion's essence, everything was consumed. The purple mist lion roared in terror as it too was swallowed whole. Serena watched in horror as the battlefield fell silent.
The mist was gone.
The lion was no more. And standing amidst the wreckage, bathed in an eerie red glow,
Asher grinned.
One more king down. We got all four now, Serena said as Asher took out the core from the mist lion as well. Yes, let's go and activate the trial.
Do you want to participate in it? He asked. She nodded.
Asher had given her many abilities, far beyond her innate healing light. Now she wielded Death Dagger, Element Mastery, and Executioner Chain, all of them granted by Asher through his mysterious blood manipulation that allowed him to extract and transfer ability essence. She still didn't fully understand how he did it, but one thing was certain, she was far stronger now. And she had been training relentlessly, determined not to be a burden on anyone. The War God trial would be the perfect place to test her newfound power. Asher nodded as he began walking, with Serena following after him.
So, how do we activate it? She asked.
Asher replied, we have to feed the cores to the central area's king, the red-tooth croc. It's a massive crocodile with a unique ability. Once we feed it the cores, it will morph into a gate, which will lead us to the War God trial. He turned ahead and continued walking toward the central mist region, where the creature resided. As they moved deeper into the mist-covered region, the air grew thick with humidity, and the ground beneath them became damp and uneven. The distant sounds of water sloshing and low growls echoed through the swamp-like terrain. Soon, they arrived at the heart of the central mist region, where a massive dark-scaled crocodile lay half-submerged in a murky pool. Its crimson-stained fangs protruded from its maw, and its glowing red eyes locked onto them the moment they stepped closer. That's the red-tooth croc? Serena asked, gripping the hilt of one of her daggers. Yeah, and we're not here to fight it, Asher reminded her. He stepped forward, retrieving the 4 king cores from his storage. The moment the crocodile saw the glowing cores, its eyes widened, and it let out a deep, guttural rumble. Asher tossed the cores toward the beast. They landed in the water with a splash, and without hesitation, the red-toothed croc lunged forward, snapping them up in its massive jaws.
A few tense seconds passed. Then, the air trembled.
The crocodile's body began to shift, its form twisting unnaturally. Mist erupted from the ground, swirling violently as the beast let out a final roar before its entire body crystallized into a towering scarlet stone gate adorned with ancient symbols. Serena took a step back in awe. It really turned into a gate.
Asher smirked. Told you.
The massive gate stood before them, pulsing with an ominous energy. The war god trial awaited. I really wonder, though, who even found out about this trial? Asher mused as he stared at the massive scarlet gate. Serena nodded but added, probably some poor soul who was running from the croc, but got his body ripped apart. If he had the cores, they might have ended up in the croc's stomach, leading to the accidental activation of the trial's location.
Asher nodded. Might be.
Given how this trial works, I think only luck could help someone stumble upon it. The gate pulsed ominously before them, awaiting their decision. Serena took a deep breath, gripping her weapons tightly. So, ready to step in?
Asher smirked.
No turning back now. Together, they moved toward the gate, its ancient energy swirling around them as they prepared to enter the war god's trial. As they stepped forward, the scarlet gate rumbled, its energy pulsating as ancient runes lit up one by one. The air around them thickened with an overwhelming sense of power. The moment they crossed the threshold, a blinding light enveloped them. Serena shielded her eyes while Asher simply narrowed his gaze, letting his body adapt to the sudden shift. When the light faded, they found themselves standing on an enormous floating battlefield, stretching endlessly into the horizon. This isn't what I expected, Serena muttered, scanning the surroundings. The ground beneath them was made of solid stone, cracked and stained with dried blood. Towering statues of warriors lined the edges of the battlefield, their hollow eyes staring down as if judging them. A deep, resonant voice echoed through the air. Welcome to the war god's trial. Only those worthy of power shall proceed. Fail, and you will perish.
Serena tensed.
That's reassuring. Welcome to the war god's trial. Only those worthy of power shall proceed. Fail, and you will perish.
Serena tensed.
That's reassuring. Before they could react, the statues came to life, their stone bodies creaking as they stepped down onto the battlefield. Each one wielded massive weapons, blades, spears, war hammers, emitting a fierce aura of battle-hardened warriors. Asher's lips curled into a smirk. Finally, something interesting. With a snap of his fingers, his sanguine supreme ability flared to life, blood-red energy coiling around his arms. Serena tightened her grip on her executioner chains, her eyes glowing faintly as she activated her elemental mastery.
The first statue lunged. The battle had begun.
Asher sidestepped the incoming strike, feeling the sheer force of the massive stone blade slicing through the air where he had just stood. The impact shattered the ground, sending cracks sprawling outward. Without missing a beat, he clenched his fist, and his sanguine supreme ability flared, tendrils of crimson energy coiling around his arm like living veins. Let's see how tough you really are, he muttered. He launched forward, his fist colliding with the statue's chest. A shockwave rippled through the air, but the warrior barely budged. Instead, its stone eyes glowed brighter, and it retaliated with a thunderous punch of its own. Asher barely had time to raise his arm in defense before the impact sent him skidding backward. Dust and debris kicked up around him as he came to a halt. Tisk, sturdy bastard, he clicked his tongue. Serena, meanwhile, leaped over another statue's swinging spear, flipping gracefully through the air. With a flick of her wrist, her executioner chains extended, wrapping tightly around the statue's arm. She twisted her fingers, and the chains constricted, cracks forming along the stone limb. These things don't go down easily, she called out. They're not supposed to, Asher replied, his grin widening. Instead of dodging the next attack, he let his sanguine supreme ability do the work. The blood coursing through his veins pulsed unnaturally, shifting, adapting. His body hardened, absorbing the impact of the statue's next punch. The force dented the ground beneath him, but Asher didn't move an inch. Then, with a quick inhale, his blood boiled. Crimson overdrive. In an instant, his speed and strength multiplied. He vanished from view, appearing behind the statue before it could even process his movement. His palm slammed against its back, blood rupture. A deep crimson glow pulsed from within the statue, and a second later, it shattered into countless pieces. Serena whistled. Show off. Just efficient, Asher shrugged, already shifting his focus to the next opponent. But before they could advance further, the deep voice echoed once more. First trial cleared. Second trial begins. The battlefield trembled. The remaining statues froze before suddenly crumbling into dust. In their place, the stone tile split open, and from the depths emerged new figures, warriors clad in ancient armor, their eyes burning with an ethereal glow. These were no longer just statues. They were spirits of fallen warriors. Asher and Serena exchanged glances. Serena smirked, tightening her grip on her chains. Looks like the real challenge is starting now. Asher cracked his knuckles, his blood power surging once more.
Good.
I was just getting warmed up. The spirits charged. The second trial had begun. Asher lunged forward, his sanguine supreme abilities surging through his veins like molten fire. The spectral warriors moved like shadows, their forms flickering as if phasing between worlds. Their swords, however, were entirely solid, the cold steel whistling through the air as they swung at him. He ducked under the first blade, feeling it barely graze his hair. Pivoting on his heel, he drove his fist forward, activating blood rupture. The moment his knuckles connected with the ghostly warrior's chest, a burst of crimson energy exploded outward. The warrior let out a hollow, echoing scream before its form shattered into fragments of light. Serena, on the other hand, had already bound two of them with her executioner chains, the cursed links glowing ominously as they constricted tighter. With a sharp pull, she yanked the spirits together before slamming them into the ground. They flickered and dissipated upon impact. Not bad, Asher commented, sidestepping another attack.
Serena smirked.
You're not the only one who's been improving. The remaining warriors didn't hesitate. They rushed forward with inhuman speed, their weapons gleaming under the dim glow of the trial grounds. Asher took a deep breath, his sanguine supreme shifting once more. His muscles tensed, his perception sharpening. He could see every movement, every flicker of light in their ethereal bodies.
Then he moved.
To an outside observer, it would seem as if he had teleported. One moment he stood still, the next, he was behind one of the warriors, his arm already buried in its spectral chest. The warrior didn't even have time to react before it burst into particles of light. Serena twisted midair, her element mastery ability allowing her to conjure a gust of wind that sent two spirits tumbling backward. She followed up instantly, summoning a blade of pure light and slashing through them in one swift motion. Within seconds, all the spirits were gone. The trial grounds fell silent. Asher exhaled, rolling his shoulders.
That was fun.
Serena let out a breath, her chains retracting. More like exhausting. Before they could celebrate, the deep voice of the trial resonated once more. Second trial cleared. Final trial commences. The air grew heavy. The ground trembled beneath them as an enormous crack split the battlefield apart. From the darkness below, a massive, ominous figure began to rise. A towering knight, clad in pitch-black armor, with glowing crimson eyes. His weapon, a jagged greatsword pulsing with dark energy, faced the champion of war. Asher's lips curled into a grin.
Serena groaned.
You just had to say that was fun, didn't you? The war god's champion took a step forward. The ground beneath him shattered from the sheer weight of his presence. Asher clenched his fists, blood-red energy surging through his body.
All right then, he muttered.
Let's see how strong you really are. The final trial had begun. The war god's champion took another step forward, his towering form radiating an overwhelming aura of power. The air around him distorted, as if reality itself struggled to contain his presence. His jagged greatsword, pulsing with ominous energy, let out a low hum that sent shivers down Serena's spine.
Asher, however, only grinned.
His sanguine supreme ability flared to life, his crimson aura thickening around him like a cloak of liquid fire. Serena tightened her grip on her daggers, her executioner chains slithering around her wrists, ready to strike. Got any ideas? She asked, her voice steady despite the tension. Yeah, Asher cracked his knuckles. Hit him till he stops moving. The champion moved.
He was fast.
A blur of black steel and crimson energy closed the gap between them in an instant. Asher barely had time to react, raising his arms just as the greatsword came crashing down.
Boom!
The force of the impact sent shockwaves rippling through the battlefield, the very ground beneath them caving under the pressure. Asher skidded backward, his boots carving trenches into the stone. Serena leaped into action, her element mastery allowing her to conjure a surge of wind that propelled her above the champion. Midair, she flung her executioner chains forward, aiming to bind his arms. The chains wrapped around his gauntlets.
Snap! And shattered. Her eyes widened. What?
The champion turned his head slightly toward her, his glowing crimson eyes locking onto her position. Then, with a casual flick of his arm, he sent a shockwave of energy upward. Serena barely managed to dodge, twisting in the air as a massive explosion erupted where she had been. Asher wasted no time. Taking advantage of the distraction, he lunged forward, his blood-red energy surging as he activated blood rupture. His fist connected with the champion's chest. And nothing happened. His attack didn't pierce. The champion didn't even flinch. Asher's smirk faltered for a split second. Ha! Then, without warning, the champion swung his greatsword in a wide arc. Asher barely had time to dodge, bending backward in an almost impossible motion as the blade whooshed over him. Even so, he felt the sheer pressure of the attack slice through the air, leaving a deep gash in the stone wall behind him. Serena landed beside him, breathing hard.
Okay. New plan.
Yeah, Asher said, rolling his shoulders. This guy's built different. The champion planted his sword into the ground, his deep guttural voice echoing through the battlefield. Prove yourselves or perish. Asher grinned, his eyes gleaming with excitement. Guess we'll just have to do both. With that, he charged forward once more. The war god's champion pulled his sword from the ground, and with a single step, he closed the distance between them again. Asher barely managed to raise his arms before.
Boom.
The sheer force of the impact sent him flying backward, slamming into the stone wall with enough power to crack the surface. Dust and debris rained down around him as he gritted his teeth. His arms trembled, just blocking that one attack felt like stopping a falling mountain. Serena darted in, using her element mastery to enhance her speed, appearing behind the champion in an instant. Her death dagger gleamed in her grip as she thrust it toward the base of his neck. Clang! Her blade barely scratched him. The champion didn't even turn. Instead, a pulse of raw force erupted from his body, sending Serena hurtling away. She twisted midair, using a burst of wind to slow her descent, but the impact still sent a sharp pain through her arms. Asher cracked his neck, stepping out from the rubble. Alright, so, hitting him isn't gonna be easy. Serena groaned as she stood up. You think? The champion slowly lifted his massive sword, pointing it toward them. You are not worthy. The ground beneath their feet trembled, and then, the arena itself shifted. Massive spikes of black stone shot from the ground, forming barriers and cutting off escape routes. The sky darkened, a swirling vortex of crimson energy appearing above. Asher's eyes narrowed. Oh great, phase 2. The champion suddenly vanished, then reappeared right in front of them. Serena barely had time to react before the greatsword came crashing down. Boom! She leaped back just in time, but Asher didn't move. Instead, his body became liquid, his sanguine supreme ability kicking in. The sword passed through his now fluid form before he resolidified and drove his fist into the champion's side. This time, his attack had some effect. The champion staggered slightly. Just slightly. Asher grinned. Looks like I just need to hit you harder. Serena suddenly noticed something. Wait. Look at his armor. Asher glanced at the champion's body and noticed faint, glowing cracks forming along his torso. Serena smirked. We are damaging him. Asher's grin widened. Then we just have to break him apart. The champion took another step forward. Asher's blood-red aura flared. Serena's chains ignited with power, as they attacked again. The war god's champion raised his greatsword, its surface glowing with an eerie crimson light. The moment his grip tightened, the entire arena trembled, and a powerful wave of force radiated outward. Asher and Serena braced themselves. Final judgment. The champion's deep voice echoed through the battlefield as a massive surge of energy coalesced around his weapon. The sky above darkened further, storm clouds swirling with raw, destructive power. Asher's grin widened. Yeah, that doesn't sound good. Serena's eyes flickered between the champion and the unstable energy gathering above. Asher, we have to stop him now. But before she could act, the champion swung his blade down. A colossal shockwave tore through the battlefield, splitting the ground apart and sending a tsunami of crimson energy crashing toward them. Serena reacted instantly, her element mastery kicking in as she conjured a barrier of wind and light, attempting to block the incoming force. The ground beneath her cracked under the sheer pressure, but she held firm. Asher, on the other hand, charged straight through it. His sanguine supreme ability flared, his blood shifting into an armor-like state, absorbing the brunt of the attack as he dashed forward. His entire form blurred, his speed multiplying as he launched himself at the champion like a crimson meteor. His sanguine supreme ability flared, his blood shifting into an armor-like state, absorbing the brunt of the attack as he dashed forward. His entire form blurred, his speed multiplying as he launched himself at the champion like a crimson meteor. The champion turned to meet him, raising his sword for another devastating strike. But this time, Asher was faster.
Boom!
His fist, coated in pure sanguine energy, collided with the champion's chest. A deafening crack echoed through the battlefield as the champion's armor shattered, the glowing cracks from earlier finally breaking apart completely. For the first time, the war god's champion staggered. Serena's eyes widened. It worked. Asher, not wasting a second, grinned. Then let's finish this. The champion steadied himself, his body flickering as his form began to destabilize. His once impenetrable aura now weakened, leaving an opening, one that Serena was not going to waste. She lashed out with her executioner chains, the glowing bindings wrapping around the champion's arms and legs, locking him in place. Asher leapt into the air, his blood shaping into a long crimson spear, one that pulsed with all the energy he had left. Let's see you block this. With all his strength, he threw the spear. The sky split apart as the attack pierced straight through the champion's chest.
A moment of silence followed. Then, boom!
The entire battlefield erupted in a pillar of crimson and golden energy, shaking the very foundations of the war god's trial. When the dust finally settled, the war god's champion was gone. And in his place, at the center of the ruined battlefield, a massive golden gate now stood, radiating an overwhelming divine presence. Serena let out a shaky breath. Did we do it? Asher cracked his knuckles, stepping forward. Only one way to find out. Asher and Serena stood before the massive golden gate, its surface etched with ancient runes that shimmered with an ethereal glow. A deep, resonant hum filled the air, vibrating through their bones as they stepped closer. Serena wiped the sweat off her brow. So, do we just walk in? Asher smirked, placing a hand on the gate. Unless you want to stand here and admire it forever. The moment his fingers touched the surface, a deep voice echoed through the space. You who have conquered the trial of kings, step forward and prove your worth. The gate rumbled before a blinding light engulfed them both, pulling them forward into the unknown. When the light faded, Asher and Serena found themselves in a colossal temple, its towering pillars stretching into an endless golden sky. The floor beneath them was made of polished obsidian, reflecting their images with eerie clarity. At the far end of the temple, a throne stood, carved from pristine white stone.
And seated upon it,
a figure clad in resplendent golden armor, his face obscured by an ancient, battle-worn helmet. His crimson cape billowed despite the lack of wind, and in his right hand, he held a massive greatsword that radiated pure, divine energy.
Serena stiffened. That's him.
Asher exhaled sharply.
Yeah. The war god himself.
The figure slowly rose to his feet. You have done well to come this far. His voice carried the weight of countless wars, resonating through the temple like the clash of 1,000 blades. But the true test begins now. The war god raised his sword, and in an instant, the entire temple shook as an overwhelming force crashed down upon them. Serena gasped, barely able to stand as the sheer pressure of his presence threatened to crush them. This is insane. This is the war god's trial, the final trial, just like last time, Asher said, his voice steady. He knew that the last trial would be a battle against the war god's projection.
Fine.
Let's see if you live up to the legend. The war god lifted his sword, the golden energy condensing around it into a blade so sharp it seemed to cut through space itself.
Come, challenger.
His voice was calm yet absolute. Show me if you are worthy of my art. Asher's blood surged, his power rising to its absolute limit. Serena gripped her chains, her aura glowing with radiant light. Asher's eyes gleamed with anticipation. This was it, the final battle of the trial. He could feel the war god's immense energy pressing down on him, but instead of fear, he felt exhilaration. Serena exhaled sharply, steeling herself. She wasn't just a spectator, she had come this far, and she would fight alongside him. The chains in her hands crackled with energy, shifting and extending as they responded to her will. The war god's projection didn't wait. With a single step, he closed the distance, swinging his golden blade in a devastating arc. The air itself howled as the sword carved through space, heading straight for Asher. Asher vanished, reappearing behind the war god in a blur of crimson energy. His fist, coated in condensed sanguine supreme power, struck like a meteor. The impact sent shockwaves through the entire battlefield, but the war god merely turned his head.
Too slow.
A backhand strike sent Asher flying, his body crashing through the ground and carving a deep trench.
Asher!
Serena shouted, her chains shooting forward like vipers, wrapping around the war god's arm to restrain him. She pulled with all her strength, activating Executioner's grip, a skill that weakened her opponent's defenses. The war god's gaze flicked toward her. With a single flex, he shattered the chains, sending the fragments scattering. Serena barely had time to react before a golden shockwave blasted her backward. Asher coughed, wiping blood from his mouth as he got back on his feet. Damn, looks like this won't be easy. His aura flared violently, the air around him turning crimson as his sanguine supreme ability went into overdrive. The war god's projection raised his sword again.
Then fight, challenger. Show me your resolve.
Asher blurred forward, his sanguine supreme ability raging like a crimson storm. Blood energy coiled around his fists as he met the war god head-on. The golden blade came down like divine judgment, but Asher twisted at the last second, dodging by a hair's breadth. Blood Requiem.